I am sick and tired of hearing people saying, well, these are the things you did, and that's why your man cheated on you. F you. Absolutely not. Somebody cheats on you, they betrayed you. Unless they clean that stuff up, you better believe it's once a cheater, always a cheater. But I think what is tricky about cheating and infidelity is
I heard that roughly 1 in 4 men now cheat in relationships, which is crazy. So when I think about how many people I've dated, the people at home dated, if you've dated more than 4 people, the chances are that maybe you've been cheated on. So what I want to know is, how can we start to identify the signs so that we don't get blindsided, so that we don't get heartbroken, and then we don't get betrayed?
I'm surprised it's as low as 1 in 4. I would have put it higher. I would have put it, so 1 in 4 is what, 25%?
Yeah.
I would have probably put it closer to 35, of 1 in 3. So cheating is a very, or infidelity, or breaking the social contract of a relationship is a very complex behavior. And it has to do with sort of, where does it fall in the life history of a relationship? How does it show up? What qualifies as cheating? All of that. Now, I'm going to sit here and, of course, I'm going to tell you that if you already are getting vibes of a toxic relationship, someone who is interrupting you, someone who is hypersensitive, somebody who needs a lot of validation, I'm not saying everyone like that is going to cheat, but you've definitely turned up the volume on that probability happening. But I actually have to tell you the hard thing about infidelity, very frankly, Lisa, unlike what I usually talk about narcissism, I don't think there are great red flags. I think there's obvious red flags where people are going to be obvious cheaters. In your first, second, third date, they're already flirting with the server or the bartender, or they already seem to be huddled in a conversation with someone at the bar when you're supposed to be meeting them, and you're like, or they're, what are you doing? Why are you so cozy with this person? Or they're liking a lot of inappropriate pictures on social media, even when you're early in a relationship with them. You follow them on social media and you see that they're always, making comments on people's pictures that kind of sort of put you off and make you wonder, why are they having to comment on how sexy people's pictures are? Oh, they're just a friend. And if they gaslight you about it, if they say, oh, it's not a big deal, we're old friends, that's probably a little bit of a soft sign. But I think what is tricky about cheating and infidelity is that it's not always toxic people who do it. And because of that, I don't think that the red flags are as discernible. And I say that for one reason, that a lot of people say, how did I not see this coming? What kind of fool am I? More than anything, I'd say, I don't think you could see this coming. And in the years I have done clinical practice, I have worked with so many clients who have been cheated on. And every single one of the profiles of their partners were somewhat different.
Okay, so is it just then, you just have to accept that and then say you just have to trust that person? Like, how do we start to assess then whether the relationship is a healthy one, whether they are going to stray or not?
I think one of the biggest problems is, we talk all the time about what makes a toxic relationship, red flags, warning signs. What makes a healthy relationship? And I don't think we have a good shared definition on that. Now, I'm going to give you a mental health answer to that question. And it's going to include respect, compassion, kindness, patience, compromise, equality, balance, the ability to see the strengths in the other partner and support them in their growth. That's the stuff that is a healthy relationship. And then there's things like shared values, shared interests, some shared things you like to do together, an awareness of what the other needs. You might not be a physically touchy person, but your partner may be. So you really do, like, you recognize that the snuggle time on the sofa, or whatever it looks like for you, is something that's important. Being aware of, what your partner needs, and giving that because it feels reciprocal and mutual and you feel heard and seen. But let me tell you, if I had to pick only one word about what makes a healthy relationship, it would be safe. We feel safe when we're in a healthy relationship. We don't feel like we're about to be invalidated or put down or betrayed. Okay, so that's what a healthy relationship is. Now let's talk about this other issue of and let's call cheating what it is. It's betrayal. Now, betrayal's a bigger word. Betrayal can be financial. Betrayal can be how a person shares confidences and secrets. And there's a lot of ways we can betray. But to me, cheating kind of has the Hall of Fame seat in the betrayal Hall of Fame, you know? So when we come to that piece of it, like, are we just supposed to trust? In a healthy relationship, the trust comes naturally. So that brings the huge question of, is it possible infidelity could happen in a healthy relationship? It's very unlikely, but yes, it can, okay? It's more likely to be a symptom of an unhealthy relationship or a pattern we see in an unhealthy relationship. But the challenge of, can I figure out, like, am I just supposed to trust and get betrayed? Well, your other option is to forever hold back and never get to experience the fullness of a relationship. Every time we fall in love, every time we enter into a relationship, we are entering into a risky enterprise. So the balancing act is, I'm just never going to trust, but I'm going to have a relationship, but I'm never going to trust. And so I'm never going to be 100% in. And so when I'm cheated on, I'll be ready for it, which to me is almost like, let's say you live in hurricane country, it would be like forever having plywood over your windows, forever turning your house into a disaster bunker. You'd always be ready for a disaster, but no light would be coming through the windows and your house would look like a bunker. That, you see what I'm saying? So like, what's the bunker equivalent of it being in a relationship? It'd be like, you'd forever be living in that kind of disaster mentality way. So you'd never fully relax. You'd never fully bring your bandwidth into the relationship. So yeah, you trust, and then yeah, your trust would be betrayed. Is there a way to prevent that? I don't think so. The one thing I'm never going to get behind, Lisa, never, I mean, I can't say never enough, is I am sick and tired of hearing people saying, well, these are the things you did, and that's why your man cheated on you. F you. Absolutely not. Somebody cheats on you, they betrayed you. They did something. And this nonsense about, well, if you'd done more of this and that, absolutely not. If that person had a problem with how you were showing up in the relationship, they had the opportunity to have a conversation. Their form of betraying you to make that point, hell no.
Yeah, fuck. Oh, thank you so much for saying that. That's so powerful, because I think that a lot of us take on that shame or the blame ourselves. And now, instead of addressing the person that did it, it becomes very shameful. And you start to look at yourself and you start to question, what did I do wrong? But I think the tricky thing is, and you'd said it earlier, these are all the things that make a healthy relationship. Some people feel like they have that. The person saying, I love you, the person saying you're my everything. They have kids and they adore the children, and then they still go and cheat. So why do they? What is it that we can maybe understand and grapple with? Because this is, it boggles my mind, Dr. Ramani, how someone can honestly say, I love you, look you in the eye, be kind to the children, shower you with things, and then go and cheat on you.
So 4 answers to that. There's 4 questions there. Let's go backwards to what I called a healthy relationship, right? At no point did I ever say there, shower with you things, give you a lot of attention, love the hell out of the kids. I said respect, compassion, kindness, patience, equity in the relationship, right? To me, the showering is already a red flag. Okay, because it's easy to shower. It's really hard to do with that other stuff unless it comes naturally to you. Empathic, agreeable people are easy to be, it's easy for them to be respectful and compassionate and all that stuff. But if all they're doing is like the things like, they're the best and they give me all these gifts and they post pictures of the kids all the time and we all go to Disneyland, I'm like, yeah, no, we're not at healthy yet. Keep giving me more. Okay? So, but you come to, that takes me though to the next piece of, but they say, I love you. I love you has got to be the 3 most dangerous words in the English language because it means something different to everybody. When you say I love you to Tom, it means something different than what I would mean when I say I love you. And when he says it, it means something than what someone, on and on and on and on. I think actually something I wish was a required part of every relationship is that you sat down across the table from someone 3 to 6 months in a relationship and said, could you break down what the I love you really means to you? Because I'd love to know what this means. Because for some people, it means very different things. For a narcissist, for example, I love you means I love how you make me look. I love how you praise me. I love that I got someone around all the time. I love how we have sex. I mean, it's all going to be very different. And someone else might say, I love you for, I feel safe and seen and heard. I see so much good in you. I feel blessed that I've learned so much from you. We don't have, and that's the problem, and especially in narcissistic relationships, they say, I love you. And a lot of times people will say, you don't love me, you did all these things. And I'll be like, slow down. They said they love you. They believe they love you. You may not agree with their definition of love. Did you ever sit down with them and find out what that really means to them? So that's one whole different conversation. So they're saying, I love you. You're absolutely right. A person will say, you said you love me. How could you do this? So that now takes us to the last part of your question, which is, why do people cheat? And I think that it's important to understand that there's many different kinds of cheaters.
So before you go into the why, actually, one more thing to just ask you about the I love you part. If you ask the narcissist what I love you means to them, are they going to admit, I love how you make me feel, I love how...
So here's the answer you're going to get from them. Ugh, what? Why you want an explanation? Like, I don't know. I just... like, dude, I like hanging out with you. Like, I love you. Like, well, what do you want? I just said I love you. Isn't that what you wanted? They will not be able to break that down for you. And that's what, remember, and again, I don't want to go too far in the narcissism weeds, but one thing that narcissistic people cannot do is they're not clear on what motivates their behavior. It's a real defining characteristic. If you ask me what I love you means to me, I could give you a dissertation. I'm very clear on what those 3 words mean to me. I'm very, very clear. But most people, you know, and many all healthy people I know, they might say, give me a second. Okay, this is what it means. But a narcissistic person will never be able to answer that question and will become very defensive and angry if you were actually to ask that of them.
Okay, thank you. I was just super curious. Okay, and now to the why then.
Okay, so the why. So not all cheating is the same. And I think that that's one of the things we have to keep in mind. And, you know, there's different kinds of cheaters out there. There are, you know, sort of what I call sort of the crime of opportunity cheaters. These are the folks who actually do love their partners and spouses. They do. They love them. They love their lives. They love their families. They love it all. And they're out of town on a convention. Maybe some people drank too much. The colleague they were a little flirty with is at the convention, and a few sloppy kisses and a little bit of something later. They're like, oh God, you know, and it's a one-night thing. Or it might even not even be someone they know. It might be they meet someone wherever, out at the bar, they're in the hotel, da-da-da-da, and that's that. And they never have anything to do with this person again. It's the belief, I'm never going to get found out. We don't even really know each other's names. It could be somebody who often feels very stuck in their lives, and by traveling and going and being in a different place, they jump out of a role. They may feel very defined and confined in their role, and so they're like, I'm just going to do this thing. But it's more than anything, it's a little bit of rebellion, and it's acting out, okay? Then there are sort of your excitement-seeking cheaters. These are people who may be in relationships that have become quite stale for them, but they feel committed to the relationship. Perhaps they're in a relationship where it's not a frequency of sex that they want, that they're overwhelmed by everything that's happening in the relationship, whatever it is. And again, they may say and actually conduct themselves in a way that they love their partner, but then they're looking for the excitement. They're looking for the excitement of the texts that come in, the fantasy of it all. The excitement-seeking cheater is someone who'll spend hours in their day thinking of the excitement of the cheat. They're getting that additional benefit in a way that we start getting into the whole emotional cheating. Like they're daydreaming. They're not thinking about their partner. They're not thinking about the stuff they're going to do to their family. They're sort of getting caught up in this ridiculous fantasy. But even they would know they're never going to really make a life with this person. There's an immaturity to the excitement-seeking cheater because they're not sort of dealing with the core issue, whether it's that the relationship has become, again, sort of stale and that need maybe for a little more excitement, which is its own, again, sort of, if more than anything, an immaturity. So the excitement-seeking cheater may even get into a long kind of a texty-text sequence with someone before they ever even meet up with the person, and then it might be these really stolen moments, and half the excitement is planning it, and where are we going to meet, and da-da-da-da. So there's that kind of cheating. There are the people who are, I'm going to call this group of cheaters, and I'm making these are designations I use. I'm not saying they're official by any stretch. Another kind of a cheater is, I'm cheating to keep my primary relationship together cheater. They believe that. So these are people who are like, I hate my relationship. I hate my marriage. I hate whatever I'm in. And if I have this other thing going on, it's giving me enough juice to be able to manage staying in this relationship I don't like. And it keeps me from breaking up my marriage, breaking up my family, breaking up this. But this other thing is helping me feel. I don't feel anything. I hate this person. I dislike this person. So I'm going to have this little affair and then, or big affair, and I don't have to address this. Then there are the, I mean, again, and this fourth group is an interesting group because I'm going to call them the online cheaters. These are the people who are getting into electronic cheating relationships with people. It's texting, it's sharing pictures, it's dick pics, it's nude pics, it's they masturbate with each other on the you know, on the phone, like they'll have video calls. They send dirty texts to each other. They never meet. This might start through DMs. It might be people who meet each other, but it's a back and forth and a back and forth, and they actually never meet. So the person is kind of getting this sort of sizzle in their day, these pictures, these messages. You're the babe. I can't stop thinking about you, babe. You're so sexy, babe. And then all this babe nonsense that's coming up through their really boring meeting that they're having in the middle of the day, and they're getting a lot of juice from that. Then you have your emotional cheaters. These are people who are, in essence, really almost having a love affair, and maybe not sex, maybe a kiss or something, but it's really like, I love you. I've never felt seen like this before. You are my soulmate, such nonsense and all that. Then you have the emotional cheaters. And then you got the narcissistic cheaters. And in the narcissistic cheater world, this is a whole different animal, okay? And in the narcissistic cheating world, you have they tend to be serial cheaters. They're doing it to get validation. They have absolutely no empathy so they're not thinking. All of these cheaters could be argued that some of that is happening, right? They're not if they really thought about their partner, they would not be sending dirty texts. They would not have fooled around with someone at a convention. They, you know, and again, for even someone who's in a terrible relationship but is keeping it together for whatever their reasons that they're trying to keep it together, for them, they might say, I don't have empathy for my partner. You're absolutely right. That's why I'm doing this, because I don't care, right? So they're acknowledging it. But the narcissistic cheater doesn't want the relationship to go away because it's serving a function for them, but they're going out and getting what they want. And they will do it repeatedly. Narcissistic cheaters lie about cheating. They gaslight about cheating. They blame their partner when they cheat. All of those other forms of cheating, those folks may not necessarily blame their partners. When they're caught, a lot of cheaters will be like, I screwed up. I am sorry. I feel sick for what I've done to you. You're a good person. You didn't deserve this. Like, that's not what the narcissistic cheater does. The narcissistic cheater will say, you know why I cheated? I cheated because you make me feel bad about myself. You know, if it's been a long time since you've told me, like, I'm great, and this person actually sees me and blah, 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 okay? So they get supply, they do it repeatedly, they don't consider how it affects their partner, they feel entitled to it, they lie about it, they gaslight about it, and they they do it with reckless abandon over and over and over again. They are very good at not getting caught many times because they're so accustomed to doing it, right? So there's that. There's a couple other forms of cheating I'll talk about, then we'll sort of bring it all together. There are people out there who have issues. Some people call it sex addiction. I prefer to call it sort of compulsive sexual behavior. These are people who might be called porn addicts, or they might go to massage parlors. So they really, much like any addict would, they feel out of control. So they may be masturbating 8 to 10 times a day as they watch porn. They may go see sex workers and get a blowjob in the street. They're very completely emotionally disconnected from the sex of it all. They're disgusted by themselves, but much like a drug addict, they almost felt like they couldn't sort of stop themselves. So there's also that kind of there's that sort of cheating group too. All right, so we'll put them in their own place. But as you can see, that these are people who are, infidelity is serving a lot of different functions for them. And there is a sort of and at the core of it, these are people who are not communicating well in their relationships, who feel entitled to something outside of the relationship, who are not being mindful and engaging in full empathy at all times for how this is affecting them. And in the case of those I hate my partner cheaters, it might be a survival mechanism. They're very different people. These cheaters are all very, very different people. So you can see how that one night stand at their teachers convention cheat. It's a great person, best partner, loving, engaged, plays with the kids, loves the partner. The partner wouldn't even have a moment of suspicion, even helped the person pack their suitcase as they went off to the convention, was even calling them every day, not even a moment's suspicion. And when that person comes back, if anything, they're probably going to be full of remorse and guilt and disgust, and might even double down on their attempts to make the relationship good. I'd be loath to call that person a narcissist. Sloppy, messy, immature, unthinking, sure. Some people think that cheating behaviors can have some of their roots in trauma, that these are behaviors that are very much embedded in things like shame, in low self-worth, in distorted scripts and narratives around sex, sexuality, boundaries. So like I said, I'm saying cheating is not a unidimensional thing. It's a very, very nuanced space. So when I work with clients who either are the cheater or have been cheated on, we really have to do a deep dive on what the whole sort of cheating landscape looked like.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now.
How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 Steps to Becoming Confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. And I assume the clients that are cheaters that you've seen as clients are not the narcissist cheaters.
I've worked with narcissist cheaters.
Really?
Oh, heck yeah.
And so do they just sit with you and then give every excuse under the sun?
There's shame. There will be shame. There will be entitlement. There will be a lack of self-awareness. I'm struck with every time I've worked with a narcissist cheater when I kind of gently try to get them to, how do you think, in many cases it was a man, so let me use that, and it was a heterosexual relationship, but not always. I worked with many gay couples where this was an issue. I'd say, can I ask you something? How do you think your wife would feel about this? I just want to know. And sometimes the reaction would be like, well, she'd be really mad, like I'm a dead man walking if she finds out. And I'd say, that's not that's not how she'd feel. That's how she'd react. Let's go deeper. How would she feel? And they go back to angry again. Why? Because angry is about them. It'll take a few cracks for them to say, she'd be hurt. She'd feel sad. She would, and then I'd have to say, so is that okay with you? You could see that it never even registered for them. They're not even accessing it. It would take a while for them to even in a meaningful way reflect on how their behavior would be affecting this person. That's how entitled they felt to cheating.
And when confronting a narcissist cheater specifically, I've heard you talk about DARVO.
Yes, so DARVO, thank you. So when you confront a narcissist cheater, especially if it's in your own relationship, right? DARVO stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. So let's say you're in a relationship with a narcissist. I'm going to play this out with you. I'm going to pretend you're my partner, and I say, hey, like, what is this? Like, I saw these texts come up on your phone. It's very clear you were meeting someone else last night. You said you were doing da-da-da. And you say, that's not true. That's not, I did not. Absolutely, that is not what happened. Like, and first of all, get the hell off my phone. And no, that's not what happened. All right. So don't like take half a story and make something up. And then you would say, and you know what? Like, I am so tired of living like this. I'm constantly dealing with your stupid accusations. Like, stop doing this to me, Ramani. Like, enough. Stop accusing me. Like, I'm tired of living with a crazy person. I'm tired of living with a person who thinks it's okay to take my phone. Like, you're weird. There's something wrong with you. Like, I do everything around here. I do freaking everything. And now this, I'm done. Like, I can't believe you do this. What's wrong? So now you've attacked me. Then it's reversing victim and offender and say, you know what? Like, actually, what you don't do around here, you sit around all the time, Ramani, you do nothing all the time. And like, I am killing myself to make this family work. Who's the one who took the kids to the soccer game 2 weeks ago? That would have been me. I'm doing it all. I don't even know what the hell you do. And now, but what you are you're great at being the police. But I guess this is my freaking cross to bear, is to be accused of all this stuff all the time. You see we started with, hey, you were not honest about where you were, down to, I'm suffering in this relationship and it's your fault and you're the reason I'm suffering.
So how would you approach then somebody if you start to feel like maybe they're cheating? Maybe you see some signs they're going, like, in fact, like going into the restroom and texting, or having two phones and things like that. What other things maybe can we identify there? And then how would you then approach it, whether they're a narcissist or not, and maybe you can break those down?
Well, I think it's going to be different. With a narcissistic cheater, there's no confronting them. There's no, I mean, the best you're going to do is say, you can confront them, but it's not because you're going to get an honest answer. Let's say you have the smoking gun. At some point you get the picture, the person they're cheating with reaches out to you. Like, you've got it. You've got video, you've got pictures, you've got incontrovertible evidence. At the time they can no longer worm out of it, then they'll say, okay, yes, happy? Are you happy? Do you feel better? Saint Lisa, do you feel better about yourself now? That, okay, yeah, I was with someone else. You know what? This relationship has been absolutely horrible for me. So yes, I'm the great sinner of our time that I went and met someone else, okay? But you know what? I should have done this a long time ago. But I knew you were going to go completely bonkers. This is not working. So what they do is they get defensive, they get angry, they use it as an opportunity to criticize the person they've betrayed, okay? And then obviously them in their shame walk off into the sunset. So, but it is all that their anger is coming out of this. They know they're not supposed to do this, right? Narcissistic people aren't psychopathic, nor are they fully delusional. They know this isn't cool. They also know it's going to make them look bad, and they will start trying to do damage control and get out in the world and say, you know, she's making this big deal about it. Like, we were just hanging out, we were friends, and now that it's over, that, yeah, sure, obviously, like, you know, we're seeing each other now, but with always lie. Narcissistic people always lie about the timeline. Always.
It's like, yeah, she was crazy.
It was not only she was crazy, like, we weren't together, like, we were just texting, we were hanging out, it was like nothing. And yeah, then when me and such blew up, sure, we started spending more time together. But like, when you see a narcissistic person quickly go out of a long-term marriage into a new relationship, there was most likely overlap, right? Because it doesn't happen like that, right? That boom, boom means that the groundwork was getting set. And then they will parachute out, or their partner will kick them out. So what I do say, though, is that if you are in a narcissistic relationship and you suspect, you don't have the smoking gun, as it were, there's a shift in the energy, there's suspicious behavior, there's the going into the bathroom, there's texting someone else in the middle of the night, it's them disappearing for long periods of time. It could even be them slipping and calling you another name. It could be obvious, it could be not obvious. But it's I guess it would be called circumstantial evidence. I can promise you, confronting the narcissistic person on that is going to get you nowhere. So if you're in a relationship like that, the hard work then becomes, in the state this relationship is in now, let's put the cheating aside for a minute. Do you like this relationship? My guess is you probably don't, but you've been trying to keep a toxic relationship afloat, right? So if you don't like this relationship, this is not working for you, and you suspect they're cheating, to take some of that onto yourself and say, I don't want this anymore. But the place people get stuck, Lisa, is they'll say, I feel like I have to prove it. So when I tell people I left, I can tell them it's because he was cheating, right? They want that
Yeah, like, catch 'em
substantiation,
out.
right? But I say to people, isn't it enough that you identified this as a relationship where the trust feels flimsy and you did not feel safe and you did not feel seen and you felt like it was emotionally abusive? Isn't that enough of a reason to leave the relationship? It doesn't have to be the great showdown about cheating. You can even say, listen, I don't know if you've been betraying me or not, but all I can say is this is not working for me anymore. Something here isn't right and I want out. But narcissistic people are so good at gaslighting is only people with the most extraordinary conviction are going to be like, I don't even care about the evidence. Something ain't right here. I'm out.
Why do then people stay even if they don't have the evidence, but they have the suspicion, whether they're with a narcissist or not?
Now you're asking a great question, and this relates to something that Dr. Jennifer Fried calls betrayal blindness. Now, betrayal blindness is this process whereby a person is in a relationship where they're an intimate, close relationship, family relationship, intimate relationship, where their trust is being betrayed. But to see that, to know that that's happening, means that their life would really crumble. The status quo would change, right? The life they thought they had wouldn't be true anymore. And so seeing it means everything falls apart. So what Dr. Fried argues is that it's partly an unconscious, not fully an unconscious process of us doing a lot of this. Okay, so we kind of don't have to see it. We kind of make excuses, but it's more than that. She describes it so beautifully in her book. She gives an example of a woman who had been in a relationship with a man who, and I'm going to gloss over some of the details, but he was really emotionally cruel to her and very distant, very remote. And then she had a baby. They had a baby together. And he was traveling a lot for his work, but instead of coming right home, which you would think a man who has a new baby would want to see his new baby right away, he'd still stop off for happy hour and all that on his way back into town, right? So this was a very disconnected man. And it was pretty clear that he was doing something that was dodgy or shady. The woman still didn't suspect this and would be grateful when he'd come home and see her and the child, but she spent a lot of time without him there. A friend of hers once suggested, hey, we should go out and we should go out and meet the guys for dinner, right? So she got a babysitter and they were going to surprise them and show up. So they go to the restaurant, they're sitting in the back of the restaurant, hubby walks in, and as he walks in, a woman jumps up and starts pretty much making out with him. And she sees this happening as she's walking from the back of the restaurant to the front to greet him. When he comes out of the embrace, there's still some distance away, apparently it was a big restaurant. She said, what were you doing? Why were you kissing that other woman? And he said, I wasn't kissing. What are you talking about? Like, I wasn't kissing anyone. She said, I just saw it. You were just kissing that woman. He's like, ugh, I don't even know what that was about. I think that woman thought I was someone else. She just jumped up and started doing, like, I wasn't like kissing. I wasn't like in it with her. Like, she just jumped up. She thought it was very clear. She like that it was a makeout session. And she bought it.
Did she actually buy it, or did
Well,
she tell
there's
herself?
the question. So Dr. Fried then interviewed her years later. And she said at that moment in the bar, in the restaurant, she saw the kiss. He said what he said about the kiss. And the thing she said, it stuck with me so much when she said this. She said, it's as though it went whoosh out of my brain. Because if it stayed in my brain, my whole life was now everything was going to go. But it was as though there was a process operating to allow the person to stay pseudo-safe, right? Because now she's not with a cheater. She just, that's a silly girl doing that at the front of the bar. She did subsequently leave him. And she then said, you know, it's strange because it's not like I don't remember it. It's there. It happened. I know it. And even as I tell you this again, I remember it. But somehow it almost got pushed away. It's like, imagine your hippocampus, which holds the memory in your brain. And it's like, it's like putting something on a shelf. Think of the hippocampus as a shelf and someone kind of goes behind the bookcase, right? It's like that. It kind of goes behind the bookcase of the hippocampus. Now it's not being held in memory and it's not affecting how a person's processing the relationship. But here's where it gets interesting, Lisa. What Dr. Fried says about betrayal blindness is that just because stuff whooshes away, it doesn't go away. So as we sit in these relationships, we start feeling sicker and less in our bodies and uncomfortable, but we can't name it because all the stuff's fallen behind the bookcase, right? So we don't see the thing, but we're like, I don't know, I'm not feeling well, I'm depressed, my body hurts, I'm sick, I'm not sleeping well, my head, people will say it's a whole bunch of stuff. But that's how the betrayal blindness works. Betrayal blindness is a big mechanism in narcissistic relationships, because when you think about it, all that stuff falling behind the bookcase, now you think you have a clean house. Actually, no, you have a bunch of junk behind your bookcase. That's what you've got. And it's not lost. It's there, collecting dust, but still taking a toll on you. And that's how people can see it, but not see it. Because to see it, and I cannot tell you, Lisa, the number of clients I've worked with who said, I remember one woman in particular who said, her friend said, you know what? His office is out near where I live. You know he's cheating. I am happy one day to kind of follow this fool around because I know you'll find something or whatever. And the woman's like, I don't want you to do that. I don't want to see. And in a way, that's a person acknowledging that if I see it, then I have to do something about it. So I don't want to see it, because it's not because they're foolish. It's not because they're ridiculous. It's not even denial. It's the shaking up of the status quo, the feeling compelled, and it changes the landscape of the relationship. That a person's like, now what I thought was a relationship with someone trustworthy, I'm in a relationship with someone who is or could betray me or has betrayed me. And that changes the entire game. And so it's a protective mechanism that many people I've known have said, I know if I open their phone, I'm going to see something shady, and I don't have the bandwidth for this right now.
And that's because they actually then have to process, well, if they cheat on me, I have to then decide whether to stay and forgive them or leave. If I choose to leave, maybe then I have to, joint custody if we've got kids, who gets the house,
the money, the this, the that, the Christmas, the Thanksgiving, the blah, 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 the whole thing.
And then I actually interviewed someone called Spirit, and she's a relationship expert. And the one thing that she said to me that really hit me was, she said, often when you have to mourn the life you thought you were going to have with them. And so you've projected like, oh, we're going to get old together. We're going to, see our grandkids at the school play. And so if you have to address the cheating and you decide to leave, now there's a whole future that has somewhat been demolished.
It has been, not only has the future been demolished, not everyone leaves. But now you're staying originally you thought you were staying in a relationship with a great person. Now you're staying in a relationship with a betrayer. It's a very different love story.
So let's actually talk about then the staying and leaving, if you don't mind. So what would have to be true, I guess, for someone to stay and for that to rebuild?
I don't think anything has to be true. I think lots of people stay after their trust has been betrayed through infidelity. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one set of reasons go to the practicality of it. Okay, so this happened, and they may actually weigh out what the cheating was, right? Was it a one-night stand in Vegas and this person has been apologizing and groveling every day of their lives? Was this an emotional, cheating, weird texting, something that maybe that wasn't the level of physical contact, but still it was emotional? Again, keep in mind, emotional cheating, women will typically report that emotional affairs do greater number on them in terms of betrayal than sexual affairs. Like the wham bam thank you ma'am in Vegas would bother them less than the long-term emotional affair of somebody saying that they love someone or were getting emotional needs. Most people will describe the emotional infidelity as far more betraying, as it were. And so I think that when that decision is made about whether a person stays or goes, we have to account for the practicality of it all. Some people might say, I don't know if I have it in me to go through a custody battle and splitting up the house and the finances and all of that, because this fool got a blowjob in Las Vegas. I don't know if I can do that. They might say, I've seen a new side of this person. I feel like the relationship has changed, but there's that group. There is a group that will say there was this person took responsibility. They were accountable. They apologized. I did feel that they, other than that moment where they were mindless and did something that hurt me, whatever amends that were made were meaningful enough for a person to say, we can move forward from this. If you look at people like Esther Perel's work, she'd say some people will even say their relationships got stronger after that. Them ain't the
Really?
narcissists. I can tell you that right now, because these are people who make genuine amends, right? They'll say, I screwed up. I did. I'm not, and they won't even try to make an excuse. They'll say, I screwed up. I hurt you. Whatever you decide, I will live with. But I screwed this up, and they will try their best. And after that, some people will say, I can work with this, and they'll go into couples therapy and they'll break it down and they'll do it. And some people will say, even after all that couples therapy work, even with good amends, they'll say, nope, you're someone I can't trust. I can't be in a relationship with someone I can't trust. Some people will fall into the betrayal blindness place. They'll say, especially if it's a more narcissistic relationship, because those relationships are so much more confusing. Remember, the narcissistic cheater is going to gaslight the hell out of you. By the time they're done, you will have been blamed for their affair. They would have said, you gained weight, the kid, not enough sex, you don't even support me anymore, you're not interested in me, we don't have the same interests, blah, 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 blah. They'll blame you. They will fully blame you. They will not take responsibility. They will not make amends. They will give a hollow apology, or better yet, they'll give an empty apology, someone will take them back, and they'll do it again, right?
And when you say hollow apology, like, oh, I'm sorry.
Babe, you know what? Like, I'm sorry. That wasn't cool. Let's go to couples therapy. Like, they'll do all the things you're supposed to do. But I'm sorry is very different than I hurt you. I can see what this has done. I broke the trust in this relationship. I cannot sit here and expect you will forgive me. All I can say is, I am the one responsible for this. You had nothing to do with this. I was the one who made the choice that night, and I have to abide by whatever you choose. And that, to me, a narcissist is never, ever, ever going to be able to do that unless they're really well rehearsed. But then if they do it again, well, then you know what that's about. There's sort of two sides to the equation. There is the person who's betrayed, what they can live with, the practical factors they're under, the level of betrayal blindness, the nature of whether narcissism is present in the cheating or not. And then there's how the cheater behaves. Are they accountable? Do they take responsibility? Are they self-aware? Are they clear on how much this hurt the other person? And are they aware that an apology doesn't necessarily mean that means that everything's going to be okay? That they recognize that once they put it all out there, make amends, apologize, all of that, that the other person may still say, get out.
So what do you think about the quote then, once a cheater, always a cheater?
I think once a cheater, always a cheater speaks to what we know about human behavior. The one thing we know about human behavior is that past behavior predicts future behavior. So if you know someone has cheated before, you've now entered it in as a possibility in this equation. Now, it's not, you're going to look at other developmental factors. If a person says, I cheated on someone when I was 19 years old and now you're 40, I'm like, okay, developmentally, those are very different stages. I'd say with narcissistic cheaters, it's going to be a once a cheater, always a cheater. There are some people out there, though, who once a cheater blew up their life, learned, went to therapy, did the work, made amends, not necessarily. From a straight probability modeling statistical basis, I totally agree with once a cheater, always a cheater. I prefer, with the narcissistic folks, it's always going to be once a cheater, always a cheater. I think there is a possibility in the other group of that not being the case. But remember what cheating is a marker variable for. This is a person who showed some level of impulsivity, acting out, poor communication skills. Unless they clean that stuff up, you better believe it's once a cheater, always a cheater.
Yeah, God, so true. I actually have a stat about that. According to Psychology Today, if they cheated before, then they're 3 times more likely to cheat again.
Right. Yeah. So it's this, right? Whatever function cheating served for them, validation, release of tension, address boredom, entitlement, whatever that thing was, right? That thing might still be there. So of course that's going to enhance that likelihood of them doing it again. Listen, a lot of cheating never gets caught. People go and do the thing, and they go and live their lives and nobody ever knows about it. You better believe those people are going to cheat again because they figured out how to do it. And it's like getting a speeding ticket, right? That everybody who gets a speeding ticket is not getting a speeding ticket because it's the first time they were speeding. They were speeding lots of times. And this time the cop had the radar on them.
Yeah.
Right? And in fact, I was watching a show the other day and the person was, I think, it was like, I don't know what the hell the show was, but the person was citing Warren Buffett. Is if you put a police car on someone for 500 miles, they're going to be able to get him on something. So it's the same thing that, you know, if a person cheats once and gets away with it, they're going to do it again. Because whatever that, so what it shows is the relative lack of empathy towards the partner, the impulsivity, whatever need was getting met, and there's no punishment. So if there's no consequence and the behavior is rewarding, a person's going to do it again, right? And they'll do it again, and they'll do it again. And just like that speeding ticket, they're going to get caught. Because one day they're going to get sloppier. Women cheat better than men, too. Women are less likely to get caught than men.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think women are probably less impulsive and probably a bit more organized and deliberate in how they go about it. They cover their tracks better. They may even engage in more emotional kinds of liaisons, but they're less sloppy. But women don't get caught as much. Maybe men also, though, in heterosexual relationships, men may not suspect it as much in a female partner as the other way around.
And actually, I don't know why these two tie together, but thinking about, you know, a guy, like the kind of joke is you ask a guy to look for something and he can't find it, and yet it's right in front of him, you know, like check a closet or something, and they're like, I can't find it. Is that also part of it, like part of their mental map? They don't identify and they don't even see the signs, even if there were signs?
Well, I think it's bimodal. I think there's a group of men out there who are paranoid, jealous, narcissistic in some cases, where they suspect cheating where none is happening. Then there's a group of men who may simply trust their partners. They may be agreeable men who do trust their partners. And I think there's a third group of men who just simply aren't paying attention. So those men may actually be very inattentive partners. They may be gone a lot. They may not be plugged into their partner's needs, wants, world. And so we got to remember, in the cheating world, there is a piece here. While in some cases where a person, again, might be in sort of an anemic relationship and someone comes up with interest. And I've worked with more than a few people who've been in narcissistic relationships and they couldn't see a way out for, again, mostly financial and practical reasons. Some were religious and cultural reasons, but they couldn't see a way out. And someone rolled up and simply started paying attention to them and being kind to them. And they said, they said for the first time I felt seen. And they started spending more and more time with the person, and one thing led to another. And they said the contrast between being seen by this person I was having this affair with and how cold my narcissistic relationship was, they said I felt tremendous shame that I was doing this, but it was the only place I sort of felt alive. And again, that's something else that Esther Perel writes about, is people who have these extramarital or extra-relational or infidelity relationships, and they feel more alive in those relationships. But I'm always going to come back to the central tenet of there's still a communication issue. But I understand folks who are in the most narcissistic relationships said, if I said I don't feel seen and I don't feel heard, nothing's going to change in this relationship. Nothing. And so I am now, for the first time in my life, or the first time in my adult life, getting this loving attention from somebody else. And it could be quite destabilizing for people, because they are, in fact, breaching trust. And let me tell you, it gets real messy real fast. Because especially a narcissistic person who's really neglectful. Some narcissistic people are just super neglectful in relationships. They don't even notice the partner unless they need them. They're just sort of married on paper. They're married for social reasons. They just don't care. And literally their partner could walk into the living room naked, wrapped in saran wrap, and they will not notice this person. And so the people in those relationships will say they will even say, this person wasn't even necessarily yelling or screaming at me. Sometimes they'd invalidate me, sometimes they'd leave me feeling dumb, but they simply do not notice me. So when someone did, I went for it, but then there'll be a lot of remorse. Like, I broke the code here, and then they, having endured that narcissistic relationship, are still the bad guy for cheating. So you can see that this gets to be really, really complicated. But ultimately, they'll say, I didn't leave because I didn't want to blow up a family. I didn't want to I didn't want to lose my family of origin. I didn't want to experience the loss in social status I would have experienced if I got found out.
God, it's so complicated.
It's very complicated.
Especially when it comes to like the different type of person, the dynamic that each of you have. And I actually haven't got a bunch of stats here. In LA Weekly, it says ages between 20 and 29, women are more likely to cheat. And over 30, men are more likely to cheat.
So probably the difference there might be, and I'd be curious to know if that LA Weekly survey, if these were people in marriages, if they had kids, and how long the relationships had lasted.
That's
right?
actually, what would be the
Those
difference?
because to me the women under 29 might be either less likely to have children, or if they did have children, might be with a partner they met very, very young. So there's almost this sort of exploratory curiosity that they had. The relationships, like I said, might be shorter term, where it feels sort of lower stakes. And that over 30, you might have more of those men who they can't quite be grown-ups yet. And they do have kids, and they have the other responsibilities, and there might be less sex in the relationship and all of that. It does come down to communication, right? Which you can't do with a narcissist, so that group is out. But with everyone else, it is really, do you feel like you can, if a person says, listen, I've gone to my partner several times and said, I would like this more, can we do this more, can we spend more time hanging out together, can we talk to each other more, can we have more sex, whatever it is, and they still felt like over and over again the partner was not willing to talk about that or meet them or compromise with them on that, and then they cheat, I'd still have the question of, did you ever think of asking your partner if they would be interested in an open marriage? And you'd say, I'm not getting these needs met here. So I need these things to happen in my life. I do. They're important to me. I do love you, and I do love this relationship, and I don't want to betray you, but something's got to give. A lot of people would never have that conversation.
It seems like now there's a lot more open marriages.
There are more open relationships, and I'm not mad at them. I'm really not mad at them. I will say, if you communicated in a way, and you have a clear set of expectations and rules. There was actually a really interesting article about this. I think it was in the LA Times. A woman was talking about her open relationship, and she had like a very ordinary job, like a teacher or something like that. It wasn't like she was working in something where they think, oh, it's all very, fabulous and glamorous or not like the norm. It's just a very ordinary job. And they didn't have children though. And when I read that article, it was very interesting for me, okay? I'm someone who's been cheated on. So to me, being cheated on is a mortal wound. And when I've done my own work in therapy and I've dug deep in, and I've been cheated by narcissists and non-narcissists. So I've had both kinds of cheating. I am a living laboratory here, darling. So I can tell you what both of those feel like, right? And I think that I wasn't going to ever be able to change these men, and I have no interest in doing that. But I really had to sit down and say, why did this bother me so much? Was I mad because this person betrayed my trust? Would I be equally mad if they shared a secret about me? Would I be equally mad if they took some money from me? And I had to sit with that. And I said, no, this cheating, this betrayal, romantic betrayal bothered me more than those two things. I mean, imagine how much money. Like if they stole $500 from me, I wouldn't be happy about it. But it would be different than this, right? And so we also have to do a deeper dive into what is the meaning of this? Is it abandonment? Is it replacement? Is it betrayal of trust? Is it because we saw it happen with parents? Is it because we felt replaced by a sibling in another part of our life? There's a whole litany of things that could have been going on, right? So it took me that bigger thought of would I ever want an open relationship, right? I did this. I'm using myself as the example, and I thought, no. I thought, but you know, I could do it too. Not that I have the effort or energy, but I could do it too. They have to be open and honest about it. That's what I loved about this woman sharing her story, because she said, we had the pact that we would come home and tell our partner if we had been with someone else, met someone else, that kind of thing. There was no holding back. So I could do it. They would have to tell. I literally felt physically ill. So I'm like, something somatic is happening here to me. What is this about? And so the best I could get to in my particular case is that sense of I wasn't good enough. And so you had to go to someone else, which is a core wound for me from a lifetime of narcissistic abuse, right? In that sense that if you could replace me, then I wasn't good enough. Now, I know that's not true. If a client was telling me, I'm like, no, that's not about you. They're cheating. It's about them. But it's how we internalize these experiences.
Your book, it's not you.
Right. It wasn't me. When these men wandered off, it had nothing to do with me, even though they tried to make it seem as though it did. It's a lot of work to say, no, they made a choice. They made a decision. The other place, though, where, Lisa, people get lost is people will make they will wonder and say, why wasn't I worth not doing that? If I was so special to this person, no, you're special. They didn't have the capacity to integrate your specialness and make choices in the best way. So it's very difficult for people who have any kind of inner narrative around, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve, I'm going to be left, I am replaceable. It hits those wounds like nothing I could ever describe. And this is why I think I'm so, not just because it's happened to me, but because I've seen it happen to so many clients. And I'll tell you, the wound of infidelity and betrayal is one that takes a lifetime to heal, and it always leaves a pretty big scar. I do not see people blithely coming back from this. I do not. And I don't care if it's a marriage, not marriage, shorter term relationship, longer term relationship. I've worked with clients in their 70s who still remember when they were cheated on when they were 19. So you better believe it stuck with them. And that's why when I hear people minimize it and make light of it, it's not to be made light of. Betrayal hurts. Relational betrayal hurts most of all. And I could sit here and tell you all day, there's complicated reasons people cheat. There's a whole bunch of reasons people cheat. I can even understand some of the reasons people cheat. I really can. But it does something to the other person that changes them. It changes their relationship with trust. It changes their relationship with themselves. It changes how they affect themselves. And like I said, I will never, ever, ever buy that somebody cheated because of somebody else. Even if you don't like someone, you can still say, yo, I can't. But listen, I get it. It's complicated. I really take umbrage at, especially when it's in a heterosexual relationship and there's people out there saying, well, the reason your guy might have cheated is because you didn't do this, this, and this. I'd be like, oh, no. I'm not buying that, because by and large, for most people, they will describe the experience of being cheated on as an asteroid that crashed into their lives.
So if you don't mind, how did you start to heal from that then? I mean, obviously...
I have to tell you, in my own self, it's what I tell everyone who's trying to heal from narcissistic abuse. It's about slowly but surely allowing yourself to be your true self, to actually no longer live a life where you are trying to be for other people, especially a partner. How can I please this person? How can I be for what do I need to be to win over other people, versus who am I? What am I about? What's important to me? What do I stand for? What are my values? Who am I? Because once you really start getting there, you're no longer defining yourself in this deficit model of, well, I wasn't even good enough to not cheat on, and I wasn't even good enough. No. I really have to go back and say, what the hell was going on for me that I even made those kinds of choices? I'm not blaming myself. I'm really not. But why was this good enough? And I see that now. I really, really see that. but it was definitely, I'm going to tell you, I've healed some, but not completely. I don't trust in the same way. I really, I don't think I ever will again. I don't. I see the potential for betrayal in every human being I meet. And so when people don't betray me, it's sort of, it's actually kind of nice. It's like a little present. I'm like, look at that person not betraying me. Kind of nice. Versus, what do you mean you betray? When people betray me, I'm like, here we go. That's good. Got it. Right on schedule. But when people don't, I'm like, it's like finding, like, I don't know, it's like somebody left a present on your front doorstep.
How are you able then to not let that, because it's a bit of a negative thinking that.
It is.
How do you make sure that that doesn't become a toxic thing that you said earlier, right? Where you hold it in your body, you know, what was it, the hippocampus on the, you know, hiding that. It's still there. So how do you make sure it isn't detrimental, or you've just accepted it?
It's like accepting it. It's actually understanding that this whole thing that is who I am, part of that is a certain suspiciousness. And instead of treating it as a damaged part of me, I'm able to turn within and say, thanks. Thanks, nervous system. I understand what you're trying to do. I'm not a suspicious woman. What I am is I recognize it as a little bit of trying to keep myself safe. And are there people I trust? There certainly are. There certainly are. I think it takes a long time. It takes me a long time. I'm very slow to warm up. But I have to say that it's the gentle acceptance that I've had many experiences that took me to a place of guardedness, and that the guardedness is my attempt to take care of myself. If it really had gone dark, Lisa, I would have never let anyone in again, and that's not what happened. But I let people in very, very, very slowly. And some people say, this is ridiculous. Like, you don't trust me. I'm like, okay, if you find this ridiculous, this may not work. But, you know, however that looks in any given relationship. But sure, I do have some guard up, and it's again, we all carry we all have a journey in which we look different ways over the course of a lifetime. For me, that as we know from Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion, not judging ourselves, a big part of self-compassion. I no longer judge myself. Instead of treating myself as though I'm some sort of like paranoid, loony person, I sort of say, some things happened to me and it changed me, and that's okay.
That's what I was going to say, because how many people do think of that as being like, oh my God, I'm always paranoid, I'm always loony, and they use it as a negative thing.
Yeah.
But it seems like you've used that as like, this is what makes me beautiful. And
it does, and it makes me, it fuels my empathy and compassion, but it's also that I think where it becomes a problem is if it fully holds a person back, that I'm saying, okay, I now know you put yourself out there, there's a decent probability you're going to get hurt. But I also know that I did come through the other side. So I know there was another side. It's not like anyone's ever signing up to get hurt, right? But you do know that it's either that or just stay locked up inside of a box. That doesn't seem as interesting to me. But there's definitely a carefulness. I will be frank with you, Lisa, it's held me back. I've seen it hold me back. I've seen it hold back people I've seen go through similar things. Like, you don't trust. When you don't trust, it's harder to collaborate. It's harder to take new risks maybe in work. It might be harder to meet new people. I mean, it certainly does. It holds me back. I have no two ways about it. To me, it's worth it.
And that part of your acceptance has been part of your healing process?
Correct. Acceptance is a huge, acceptance and self-compassion, understanding where it comes from. It's being kind to that part of yourself. And I think when you do that, you might actually be able to enhance trust more, because you're like, okay, I'll be able to manage this. If this thing happens, I will be okay. Instead of, I'm such a fool for getting scammed. You can find that compassion in yourself. But I think that relational betrayals at this level, romantic relational betrayals of trust, are some of the hardest things to come back from. Again, Dr. Freud calls it betrayal trauma. That what happens to us when our trust in someone we believe in and felt safe with is betrayed. It's unlike other forms. It's very different than if a stranger jumped out of a corner and stole your wallet. That's trauma too, right? Don't get me wrong. but it's very different because that trauma is more that you may not feel safe in the world in the same way. You may not go down that street. You may not go out at night. You may be less trusting of people in general. But the trauma that comes when somebody you genuinely trusted with your heart, with your life, with who you were, is able to lie to you, lie to your face, and not really care about how it would affect you. That really changes a person's relationship with trust, not only of others, but of themselves. And many, many people will wonder, I'm so dumb, how did I miss this? And that's where the work is, you're not dumb. You may have missed it. In fact, there's really, really interesting work out there, and this relates to Dr. Fried's work. A woman named Dr. Leah Cosmides, who's a professor at UC Santa Barbara, she's done work on she said, we as human beings are naturally wired to be able to detect cheating. We know when we're being tricked.
People or women specifically?
Everyone. And she said it's because we are a tribal social species. So if somebody was cheating in that social group, it's a problem. So we have the capacity to detect that kind of social deceit. We do. Where Dr. Fried's work gets interesting is that although we inherently have that ability to know someone's scamming us, then it's the betrayal blindness. If we detect it and it's going to turn our lives upside down, there is a protective factor, and let's just cordon that off. And that's why people often don't or can't see it when it's happening. And it takes more than a few exposures to see it. And to your point about the person who had said, we're not just grieving that this relationship has ended, we're also grieving a future that we had expected was going to come, whether it's growing old together or whatever it may be. And we also, but I'll tell you, we're grieving something much bigger. We're grieving a world where we believed in the innocence of a forever love story. It's a big loss.
Is that why it may be easier for friends to spot when someone's partner's cheating than it is for them themselves?
100%. So friends can spot it because they don't have the betrayal blindness happening.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why, honestly, folks, you should probably listen to your friends if they're saying something doesn't seem right here. Listen to them because they're not having the same kinds of protective mechanisms clicking into their brain. If anything, they've got your back. They're looking out for you, whereas you may honestly be detecting it. According to Cosmides' research, you would figure it out, you were being betrayed, but that betrayal blindness will kick in so you can maintain that status quo and remain attached to that other person.
So if your friend says it, would what would you ask why so that you can really hear it? How do you start to open your eyes and mind up?
I think the challenge is, so let's say we're talking to the friends right now. The thing that's going to be hard is if you're a friend and you roll up to your friend and say, hey, guess what? I think your husband's cheating on you. It's probably not going to work, right? If for some reason you've come into some information or you've observed something that's concerning you, you might want to start small and say, how's everything going between the two of you? How's it been? And then say, listen, I want to share something with you that's uncomfortable, and I don't even know where to begin, and it's going to be a lot to hear. I'm going to be frank with you. I've had this experience, right? And
where a friend did it
where a friend
to you?
did it for me, yeah. And the friend handled it so well, and I believed her because she was one of those people I trusted constantly. She never would have. I knew she would have never. There's no reason for me to not believe her. And because she told me and I trusted her, I did believe her, and it was a whole cascade of events happened after that. But she did it very gently, right? It was found the time and space, took me aside, sat me down, explained her concerns, said, this is the only reason I'm telling you. She handled it. It was absolutely perfect way she handled it. And and she was right. And she was right. And so I think it's really about the friend, how they handle it. And I have to tell you, to all the friends out there, as it were, don't be surprised if your friend, that you're telling them of your concern about a betrayal that you're witnessing, that your friend's betrayal blindness also extends to you, and saying, Don't be ridiculous, or you're jealous of me, or whatever it may be that they might come up with, because that betrayal blindness casts a pretty wide net in a way that the person doesn't want to see it. They don't want to see it. You being the source of information is not going to change that.
But I think that sometimes then, because of that, to your point, people may push back and say, well, you're just jealous, or, you know, maybe they're triggered and that's why they're being aggressive back. But I think that ends up being one of the reasons why some people may not then tell their friends.
That's exactly right. Some people will say, I don't want to lose this friend.
Yeah.
They might say, let's take a wait and see on this. Let me see if my friend raises suspicion. So some people might wait for the friend to say, I am a little worried. I saw something weird on a DM, and say, okay, we need to talk. Then your friend might get mad and say, why didn't you tell me sooner?
Yeah, that's going to be my next thing, because it's like, you've hid this from me.
It comes, you know, it really gets to this place of friendships are interesting, right? They're much more durable than intimate relationships, right? My closest friend named Jill, she says, yeah, friends are like cactus, right? And she says, you're my cactus friend. So I don't need to water you. You're there. That's fine. I don't have to water you for 8 months. You're still alive. It's great. I pick up the phone 8 months later. We pick up and it's great. And then all of a sudden a blossom comes out of the cactus. She's absolutely right. There's a hardiness to friendship that no other form of relationship has. Not family, nothing. And certainly not intimate. The friendship, to me, it's a shame we don't invest more in our friendships, because they are so shelf stable, as it were. You can just, they just keep going and staying in place. I think any friend has to sit down and have that conversation with themselves of, I'm risking it all in this friendship if I say something and if I don't say something. And then if they find out I didn't say something, I think if the friendship is healthy, you're going to find your way out of this morass. But you may lose that person for a minute. I think there is some acceptance around that, because these are primal things, you know, this sense of unpacking betrayal. So we often kill the messenger, is my point. And so they, you know, the friend who does bring this attention, you might be killing that messenger. Or you could just say, listen, I'm a little concerned at how this person's conducting themselves in your life. I've heard things, it bothers me, and then test the waters. And if your friend's like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, you're so jealous, you're so weird, then say, okay, I'm happy to talk about this. And if they shut you out, then they've spoken. You know, you've tried to do what felt like the right thing to you. I don't think you can be strategic about this. You have to do what feels right to you in terms of those kinds of disclosures. And let's face it, Lisa, in the last 20, 25 years with the internet, because when I went to graduate school, it was pre-internet, right? So even how infidelity and all of that was talked about, how we'd see it in a patient, was entirely different. I almost challenge everyone. How would you cheat on someone if you didn't have a cell phone or the internet? People did cheat back then, but how did you do it?
It's almost like, would it be easier because then you couldn't track somebody? Because you're like, I'm actually gone for a couple of hours. And if you're gone for 3 hours, you can't just call them and say, hey, where are you?
Correct.
They can just come back and say, oh my God, my car broke down on the freeway.
Yep. So that, I think, once they found the new person, I think you're absolutely right. The ability to conduct that, but the finding would have been more problematic, right? Yeah. So the person was seeking that kind of validation in a extramarital person or an extra relational person, that would have been a lot harder. Yeah. But also the way that people are conducting their inappropriate relationships, right? And it takes us to a different conversation. And I'd imagine that people watching this, it'd be an interesting poll or question to put out to them. What do you consider cheating? What is cheating? Is texting someone and sending inappropriate pictures and saying sexy things, is that cheating? Or doing that in their DMs, is that cheating? Is sending someone a dick pic cheating? Is sharing emotional stuff with a person, saying, I've never met anyone like you before, cheating? I saw your face change on that one, girl.
Yeah, that one really got me. I was like, the dick pic one didn't even bother me as much as that one.
You know, is making out cheating? Is a blowjob cheating? Is oral sex cheating? Is it intercourse? What is cheating? That's half the battle. And this is especially narcissistic people will say, oh my God, I sent someone a dirty text. I was drunk. That's not cheating. You better be very clear on what you consider cheating. And I don't think we have an agreed upon definition. I think it's what anyone considers to be a betrayal of trust in a relationship. But now we're back to I love you. I love you means something different to you and to them. And what qualifies as cheating means something different. It means something very different. I think all of those things I just said are cheating. I do, because I think they're all a betrayal of trust. The index I've always used with my clients has been, who are cheaters. I'd say, see this thing you did? How would you feel if your partner did it? That's the question. And if they could say, and anyone watching this could say, I wouldn't have cared, it wouldn't have bothered me, I'd be like, okay. But by and large, when I'd say, you tell me, this is exactly what you did. Your partner did this with a guy. How would you feel?
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now.
How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. Yeah, that's such a strong question. But I think it also does come back to, you need to still have that communication, right? Because if you're okay with it, it's like, oh, I don't mind if my husband texts his ex, as long as it's not a sexy text. But he may care. Now you're not aligned on that same boundary.
I so love that you brought that one up, right? So that's a great example, Lisa. Texting an ex. Is that cheating or is it not? That's where we start getting into the gray, right? So even like the dirty texts, like, I can't stop thinking about your whatever sexual appendage it is, right? I can't stop. That, that's sort of like a little dirty, sizzly thing. But texting an ex who you don't think about anymore, you broke up, it's been 10 years, but they're just texting him like, hey, how's it going? Like, I heard about the rainstorm where you live. You doing okay? Some people, Lisa, would consider that cheating. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying it. Everyone has to be on the same page. And then if a person says, this is why, honestly, if we lived in Ramani's relationship fantasy land, just like when I'm a therapist, I have to give everyone an informed consent form. It's like 5 pages long. It's all the conditions. There's this, and this is how you cancel, and these are the limits, and this is what confidentiality is. If you're suicidal, this, and this is how much, blah, 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 blah. 5 pages of that. Then they sign it at the end, and the assumption is they're agreeing to these conditions. Imagine if we did that in a relationship. This is what qualifies as cheating. This is what I mean when I say I love you. This is this da 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 da. Imagine if we had that all in writing.
I dig it. That should be a book.
Yeah, I to call it like a consent form for a relationship. Yeah. Like this is what I am. So what if a person said, hey, I consider you texting your ex cheating? The person can say, okay, this negotiation's off the table. Because that's what we do. We slide contracts across the table. You might be like, yeah, no, I'm not giving you that percentage of my back end. Yeah, no, we're not doing that many shoots a week. And you're crossing them out. The other person's like, no, I'll meet you on the back end, but not on this. So imagine we did that kind of negotiation. And a person might say off the table, my ex is one of my closest friends. I do not think of this person sexually anymore, but if I cannot communicate with them, imagine you got that out of the way in the first month.
It's genius. I love it. And it's interesting how we would put that time and effort into a business or finance,
Yes,
but we don't do it for our
never
heart.
put that into our relationships.
Like, I remember when I first started, when Tom and I first got married, people were like, oh, because I'm like, oh yeah, we always work on our relationship. I remember people's response would be like, if your relationship is work, then it isn't, like, it's not a good match. And I was like, what? I don't get. You would expect me to work on my business, on my career, but you don't with my relationship. Like, that always felt like a big disconnect. So maybe it's just like the social norm that we need to start. And if you wrote a book, Dr. Ramani, about like the social contracts, and maybe it's just in the book is the contracts, and now it becomes like more socially normal for people to do it.
Well, I think it's a couple of things, though, Lisa. I think one of the big errors a lot of us make in relationships, and this isn't necessarily related to cheating and infidelity and betrayal and all of that, but it's related to the primal urge we have in an intimate relationship, the same primal urge we had as infants, is that the other person will always anticipate our needs. As a baby, the fantasy for the baby was that the mother would be, or the caregiver, I should say, would be so perfectly responsive that every need, that there was no difference between them and the caregiver, that every hunger, discomfort, closeness would always be met immediately. So what does the child learn to do? Cry to get those needs met. As the child gets older, they learn to regulate themselves, say, oh, this lunch is coming, you know, or now they're toilet trained, or I can use my language to draw my caregiver close, whatever that looks like, right? So that's how we evolve when we're babies. But when we get into intimate relationship, we kind of go back to baby. And a fantasy is that this partner will know that texting their ex is cheating. This partner will know all these things I need them to know about me. They'll know what I love you means. Why would they? Why would they? And so that kind of transparency in a relationship is so important. But I have to say, I'd never want to sign a contract with a narcissistic person. They're gonna lie. So it's that ain't worth a piece of paper. So you've got that same problem if you're dealing with someone who's shady, untrustworthy, toxic, narcissistic. That process still won't fly. But maybe you'll learn a little. So they might just agree to everything you want just to be able. It's like love bombing, just to get you trapped under glass. But it is like a business. It is like a business contract, though, Lisa, because we could write a 20-page business contract to avoid every single little thing that could go wrong, and yet that thing you never thought of shows up. It's not written in the contract, and then it's litigation and the whole 9 yards. I think that when betrayal enters a relationship, it's like that. It's the thing we didn't think of, and that's why some people, will look back and say, I should have known this was coming. They cheated on me 3 times before we were ever engaged, but then I was convinced once I had a ring on my hand, and then they would never cheat, and once we were married, then it was legal and they'd never cheat. But that, I would say, is a naive assertion, because cheating is a behavior, and no legal contract would necessarily change that. And other people will say, I am in a relationship with the sweetest person you could ever imagine, and then that sweetest person was simply being sweet with someone else, and that other person sort of misinterpreted it, or maybe not even interpreted it. They were too sweet, their boundaries were poor, and before I know it, my partner was in an inappropriate relationship with someone else. They're still really sweet, kind, respectful, and good to me, but they made this mistake. That's not respectful. You see what I'm saying? It changes the whole narrative of the relationship, and it's really hard, Lisa, to change our schemas of a person. You're Lisa to me. Let's say you betrayed me, okay, now whatever way. I now have to change my schema of Lisa, and that's a really hard thing for us to do when we care about people. I have heard of people who in adulthood will say a parent betrayed them financially or some other way, and they'll say, oh my God, like this is my parent who I thought I could trust on me, who fed me, who changed my diapers, and now I'm 40 years old, and this person, my parent, betrayed me financially. And they'll say, I have to write, there's an entirely new narrative I have to write of this person, or what I've always known to be true about this person, but I didn't want to admit. Now I have to own up to it. So like I said, betrayal, cheating, infidelity is a very complex topic that I think a lot of people try to oversimplify, like keep it sexy and your man will never cheat. I'm like, the hell they won't. I mean, I think of all the people out there that have brought their AAA game to a relationship and their partner still was unfaithful. It's not that. It's not
That would
you.
be an exhausting way to live as well, to always feel like you have to show up as your best self in that relationship, otherwise they're going to leave.
Or they're going to cheat.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, to me, cheating is leaving. I think cheating is a form of abandonment. It's a form of emotional abandonment. It really is. So I do think cheating is leaving.
But I think for me at least, I would rather Tom leave than cheat on me.
That's interesting. Not everyone would agree with that.
Really?
I think a lot would. It is. I agree with you, because if a spouse, I don't want to call, because I love Tom, so I don't want Tom to be thought of that way. But if a spouse were to leave some people would say, if they left, that's more honest.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And I could
how
actually
I feel.
continue. They came up to me and said, this relationship isn't working for me anymore. Not to say you're not going to be heartbroken, but it's a very different heartbreak than somebody cheating on you. It's a very, very different. Because if that happens, yeah, sure, there might still be some element of self-blame. But if a person says, listen, we've gone in totally different directions. We're wanting different things. I actually really adore you, but I want to get out of this while we still like each other. And it's still going to be heartbreaking. But that's very different than a person cheating on you and a person wondering, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? Am I dumb? I'm so embarrassed. On and on and on. That list would go on. Why did they choose someone else? And that's the other thing that happens when a person's cheated on is, why didn't they choose me? That's a very primitive dynamic. The child wanting to be chosen, to be loved, to be seen. And for people who are cheated on, they'll often say, why wasn't I the one chosen? It's very hard to sort of fully internalize the sense of, it's not you. It was never about you. It was about them and their needs and their wants.
Why is it I'm just going to use women as example because these like my friends and people around me that I've seen and heard, they blame the woman that their partner has cheated with.
I hear that happen a lot, yeah.
More so though than they blame their partner. So I don't know if you remember back in the day, the rumor was that Brad Pitt cheated on Jennifer Aniston with Angelina Jolie. My mum hated Angelina Jolie. And I'm like, but Mum, it's Brad Pitt that did the cheating.
Yeah, that, again, I think that still speaks to an internalized oppressive myth, but this idea of, the myth is, the relationship would have been just fine if this other person didn't show up.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, folks, there was something wrong. And it may not even be that the relationship was wrong, but someone in that relationship had something not right with them. Does that make sense? So it wasn't you can't, and the desire to blame that other person with whom the person had the affair, right? I understand that, I hear that. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, anyone could have come up. And this person was primed because they needed validation, they needed excitement, they needed whatever the hell it was that this betrayal would get them, right? That the person they cheated with is replaceable. But that happens all the time. And I'll tell you why I believe that's the case, Lisa. If we blame that third party, the person that in this case, the man cheated with, it helps everyone else feel safe in their relationships. Well, our relationship is fine because this sort of awful person didn't come along. So it allows people to stay safe.
That's so well put. I've never understood why.
I think that's part of it.
Because I've always thought, well, it's in this situation, it's the guy that's betrayed their spouse.
Yep.
Obviously, if you know someone's married, I mean, not to pass judgment, I still think that's absolutely horrendous, though, if you know someone's married and you still go with that person, but they haven't got the trust that's been built. It's the partner that has the trust and they've broken it, not the third party.
Correct. The third party has nothing to do with the person who feels betrayed in the relationship, right? Does that make sense? So it is but I think that's and we do that much more often when the man cheats with a woman. When a woman cheats with a man, so she's cheated on her husband, we're less likely to blame that man on the outside. We really are.
You're right. Yeah. So that's just the double standard.
I think it is. I think it's a gender depressive thing. I really, really do, and I think it's so built into the culture that we do have to catch ourselves and say, because we have to remember too, narcissistic cheaters love bomb the person they're cheating with, and they often lie to them, right? So just like they love bomb their original partner, the narcissistic cheater is going to love bomb their new lover, all the things, the gifts, the this, and they're also going to sell them sometimes what's a false narrative. My marriage is falling apart. We haven't had sex in this long. This person is mean to me and abusive to me, and they hate me and this and that. So they really do sell a victimized narrative. And that's part of the love bombing scenario of getting this person into an affair with them. So that person, that third person, was subjected to the same thing, and maybe a lot of deceit too, right? So people said they should have known. What should they have known? For all you know, this person is saying that they're halfway through a divorce and that they've done this, and the only reason we're living in the same house is because the real estate's so expensive. It's plausible. It's plausible. Especially if somebody's really charmed by someone, which they would be with a narcissistic cheater, and then you throw in there whatever dynamics that person is going through who is being love bombed, the new person, around what it means to be chosen and all that other stuff, it starts to get very complicated. And because narcissistic people do tend to love bomb the new person who's a new source of validation, narcissistic people are very novelty seeking. That's another reason they're more likely to cheat. They like new things.
And how in that moment then do you make sure that you don't compare yourself to the person that they've cheated with?
I don't think you can. I don't think that's a realistic ask. So when people say, just don't, it's an unfair comparison, I'd say to the client, all right, let's just explore it. You're going to compare yourself to them, so let's do it. No matter how much I say it's the them and it's not you and da da da, let's sort of play it out. And it's a natural process because we always do the math of that person was chosen instead of me. My response is that person was chosen because they serve a different function than you. They're a screwdriver and you're a hammer. You're just serving because this person who's doing the cheating may very well be viewing you as functional creatures in their life. The spouse is the forward-facing, public-facing, look at me, I'm the family person, we've got the kids, we've got the house, we've got the this, we've got the that. And the person they're cheating with is excitement, sneaking around, getting away with it. And it's funny because I've worked with enough people who've been in relationships with narcissistic cheaters who have said to me that, and I was thinking of one person in particular, she was very aware that her husband was cheating on her. Husband was ragingly, malignantly narcissistic. She was very aware that the husband was cheating. She said it to him. And no matter how many times she said it, she will not leave him, by the way. She will not, because a divorce was going to be problematic for a series of reasons, right? So she wouldn't get a divorce. Been married a long time. And it was very clear over time that I said, well, since you know he's going to keep seeing her, you're very aware of this, okay? So if you know that, you know he's going to keep seeing her, so why don't you communicate about that? So she did. And she said, I'd feel a lot better if you just be honest with me when you're going to see her, because I know you're seeing her. It's very clear to me, okay? So why don't you tell me when you're going to see her so I don't feel crazy, right? And he's like, don't be ridiculous, okay? I'm not, I told you I'm not really seeing her anymore. Don't be ridiculous, okay? You win, blah, blah, blah. So there was a time, for whatever reason, the time of day this dude was going to leave the house or something. She said, are you going to see such and such? Absolutely not. I am not going to see her. I am not going to see her. She didn't believe him. So she drove out to where the lady lived. And there was his car in her driveway. So he really went out of his way to lie about it, even when she asked him point blank, knowing he's seeing her. So then it makes you wonder how much of it is about the getting away with something. And in his particular case, I think a lot of it was the getting away with it. It was the what's the word I'm like, the heist of it all. It was the scam of it all. He wanted to, it only worked if it was on the down low. Telling her didn't work.
And for her, it was the honesty that was important, not the infidelity.
Correct. Like, just be honest with me so I don't feel crazy. And he wouldn't do it. He kept, it was constantly, every time. It wouldn't work. It was, I'm imagining this guy not being able to get it up if he knew she knew. That's what it felt like.
That's what he got his...
That's how he got, I think he was getting off on the whole, I'm getting away with something.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking, and yet it's also complicated. Because as I said, some people will say, I never viewed myself as a betrayee person, but I also know I can't leave my narcissistic relationship. I don't know what to do. And somebody started paying attention to me, and then it went one step too far. That would be a person who's a cheater would say it. But I never thought of myself that way, and I can't get out of my relationship. There are people out there who were seduced by the narcissistic person into an affair under false pretenses. Who people say, well, you could have done your research. Can you? I mean, somebody's telling you that this, and this are true, right? And they believe it, and they're being fully love bombed, and they now be maybe trauma bonded to this narcissistic lover of theirs. They're also in a position where they're being harmed by this narcissistic person, but they're the person who's being cheated with. However, and here's where it gets you on another twist on this, is where a person, so let's say you have a narcissistic, we'll name him. Narcissistic John is married to Mary, and they've been married for a while. Narcissistic John meets Debbie, starts having an affair with her. Narcissistic John has told Debbie, we're actually about to file for divorce, and we're done. I am in the process of moving out. Our relationship is over. I feel bad for the timing. Now I'm going to move things quicker because I've never met anyone like you. Love, mom, love, mom, love, mom. Okay? So Debbie's being love bombed. But John's lying to Debbie. John has no intention of leaving Mary. And so Debbie's waiting, thinking, okay, John and Mary are working it all out. John's going to leave Mary. Debbie is planning her life around making a life with John. John does not leave Mary. How do we even conceive of a Debbie in this? Because a lot of people would think Debbie's bad. But Debbie was sold a story and she believed it. And she's waiting and waiting and waiting. And John is staying with Mary. Mary might be kind of aware of maybe something suspicious with Debbie. But meantime, Mary's getting the holidays. Mary's getting the family vacations. And Debbie's sitting alone by herself on New Year's Eve. Do you see what I'm saying about this getting complicated? It's complicated.
The same thing, actually, as you're saying, it happened to my cousin. So my second cousin was with a guy. We met him. We all really liked him. He proposed. Everyone was excited. Turned out he had a whole wife and kids in like Wales. Okay. And so he was always just like, oh, I go for business to Wales. So he living in London, just for context. So we were living in London and he would just say half of his work was in Wales.
And that's plausible.
And she never knew. And so she has this whole future planned out in her head and then finds out that he's married with kids.
But she probably held on for a long time, thinking that was believable.
Yeah.
That's my point. But someone would have viewed your cousin as the other woman, right? And so that's what I'm saying. It's not as simple, because someone could say, well, she was enabling all this by cheating with him. She was told that she wasn't even told any of this. She thought she just met a guy who's not even in a relationship. So there's where I'm saying that it's not that simple. Ever. But one thing we do know is when a person has gone through relational betrayal, through infidelity in that way, it changes them. It really, really does. And in some ways, it doesn't matter which side of that equation you're on, whether you're the Mary or the Debbie. Mary would go through one experience, but Debbie would go through another too, because Debbie was betrayed as well. Your cousin was betrayed as well.
Dr. Ramani, I think you have just laid out so many truth bombs in this episode. Where can people find you and your book, It's Not You?
So please pre-order my new book. It's all I can say. You know this as well as me as an author, that, the pre-orders matter.
Yes.
Because it again, for me, getting this book out there and making this book succeed isn't just about, like, I'd love to have a very successful book, which would be lovely. But what's more important to me is that the more people who buy this book, benefit from this book, heal from narcissistic relationships, the more that the focus on these kinds of relationships becomes a focus of therapists, of research, of all the things we need, so that people are not suffering silently the way they have since time immemorial. And there's so much in there, whether you're going to stay in your relationship, whether you're going to leave your relationship, whether this is a family member, whether it's a partner. A lot of the stuff's the same. There's some things that are different. The book really breaks it down. So please come check it out. We have all kinds of pre-order incentives that if you pre-order the book and you hold on to that order number, we have all kinds of amazing free events we're going to have that you can check out. But then we have bonuses that if you've pre-ordered the book, there might be some cool stuff in there. So just putting that out there as a teaser. But we have all kinds of great stuff coming up in the months to come if you care about this topic. And so please, I would love it if people would check it out, pre-order it. We still have our healing program for people who are healing from narcissistic relationships. We have our YouTube channel where every day we have new videos about narcissism. So nothing but information out there on how to make sense of these relationships, but more importantly, how to heal from them.
If you want to learn why men still cheat in relationships, then keep watching.
I would have just been so insecure and been like, oh, where are you? Who are you hanging out with? Like, show me the messages or whatever. I would have just been like very insecure. Very insecure and needing it to be all about me because I lacked the emotional tools and I lacked again, I hadn't faced myself yet. This is why it goes back to the beginning. Like I finally started to face myself 10 years ago. And it's been a journey of facing myself in many different areas of life that have taken time. But I think it was the fear of being alone, the fear of like not being enough, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being talented enough, smart enough, and there's going to be someone else that's going to make the girls that I was with, happier or something, right? So it all comes down to I am not enough. And it all shifted when I started to say I am enough. And I started to recognize how much enough I actually am and what I am willing to accept and what I'm willing to not accept and to be okay alone. I really had to learn how to go on dates by myself. And I did this for many, many years where I was just like, okay, I'm afraid to be alone, so I need to go be alone as frequently as possible. So I would go to dinner by myself and order for one. I would go to movies alone and sit by myself.
Were you uncomfortable as you're doing this?
The first few months of this, I was like terrified. I was like, what are people thinking about me? And do I even like my own company? And, all these things. And then I was just like, no, I would practice this over and over again. As I went to New York City, I would go to the park by myself alone. I would go on walks by myself. I would just like date myself. And it was one of the best exercises I learned. And it took a couple years of doing that until I felt like, oh, okay, the jealousy has left my body. And I think it was, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago when I realized I'm not jealous anymore. Because one of the girls that I was dating, like, I can't remember what happened. She did something with a guy that was like, that maybe would have made me upset in the past. They were hanging out and I just felt nothing. And I was like, maybe I'm just mature. Maybe I'm growing. Maybe I'm developing, healing. It was kind of like a journey of all of it. And it has set me free. Letting go of jealousy has set me free because if Martha wants to be with someone else, then be with someone else. If someone is a better fit for you, why would I want to rob you of a better aligned relationship and a better life for you? If I don't provide that, that doesn't mean I'm bad, wrong, and not enough. It just means we're not aligned and we're not the right match. And that's okay. There's 8 billion people in the world. I'm sure there could be another person that would be a better match if she didn't think I was a good fit. So it would be on her if she didn't think I was a good fit, but I'm not going to change who I am. And that's why I said when we started getting committed, I said, I am going to fully accept you. And I told her, I'm not going to get upset at you. I might be like frustrated, but I'm not going to get upset at you. I'm never going to raise my voice at you because there's nothing you could do that could upset me. If I accept who you are at your core and we create agreements together, if you break the agreement, I know you're going to take full ownership and responsibility. We have flexibility. It's not like it's so strict. If you break an agreement or I break an agreement, we're going to take ownership. We're consistently growing together in emotional coaching together, and I do it individually and you do it. So as long as we agree on these terms, why would I need to be jealous? Why would I need to be upset at you? Why would I need to say, don't do this? And so I told her, I fully accept you and I won't get angry at you. And you can ask her. I've never gotten upset at her. It doesn't mean we don't have challenging conversations. Of course, yeah. Doesn't mean there hasn't been sad moments. It doesn't mean there's been like letdowns from both of us. But we both are in agreement that we're in this together and we're in alignment together of how to communicate, conscious communication. Mm-hmm. So we set boundaries about when we communicate about challenging things. And it's a constant journey, but when I fully accept who she is and she fully accepts who I am, it's a game changer. And so I had to ask myself, okay, here's a massive celebrity. Here's a person who's done 40 movies, who's a superstar in Mexico and becoming bigger around the world. She's only going to become more famous. More men are going to desire her more and more. She's only going to be a rising star, especially because I'm just going to keep lifting her up and giving her more energy because I want her to succeed. So when that happens, and she's done kissing scenes and sex scenes, not like little sex scenes, but she's done movie scenes.
It's not porn, but it's sex scenes.
It's like intimate, like bedroom scenes with other men in the past. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some of them. And I remember being like, this bothered me. I had to really check in. And there's a little bit of ego that's like, that's my woman, right? That's my girl, and this person's doing this. But I had to, maybe that was for literally 10 seconds. But again, if I'm coming from my ego self as opposed to my conscious self, in my conscious self, I know this is art. This is an artistic expression. I also know there's 50 people in the room. I also know it's mechanical. I also know it's about telling a story. And she is a storyteller. So why would I change who she is when it brings her the most joy and love in her life? So I had to say to myself, okay, I know this might be a thing you do in the future. Do I accept that? When we have kids and you do that, is that going to be okay for me? I had
And
to
your
go.
kids turning around and saying, Daddy, why is mommy kissing
making out
that
this
guy?
guy. Yeah, this like shredded 25-year-old, whatever, right? And so I had to ask myself all these future questions and say, will I accept and fully love her even when she does these things for her art? If she did it in life differently, that's a different story. That wouldn't work. But for her artistic expression, her vision for her life. And I was like, yeah, I fully accept it. And I also fully accept that she is going to take care of the relationship, that she's going to put herself in the right situations. She's going to choose stories that align to her life and our relationship. And if she makes out with a guy, then she makes out with a guy. And I would have never been able to say that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm saying I do not accept who you are, and I'm trying to change who you are. That means I don't fully love you if I'm trying to change you, and I don't accept you. So I need to overcome whatever I'm going through and say, yes, I accept you, or no, I don't want to be in this relationship. It's that simple. If you don't accept someone you're with, don't be with them. And if they don't accept you, then why are you guys together? Like,
have you worked through that? Because I love everything you're saying, but we all know there's a massive difference between, okay, knowing it and being like, look, this is your art form, I respect it, I support it. And there's a whole other thing, Lewis, with you standing there behind the cameras when your woman is just like really making out with this hot guy.
Yeah.
Because I hear you talk about triggers a lot and how you've actually worked on your triggers and making sure that you're unwiring your triggers. And so as you were talking, I literally go, I can completely see that you've done all the preparation work, that you're like, I understand why. But then when you're standing on set, the trigger, by definition, is a trigger, right? Where it overcomes the mental part and just gives you a visceral reaction.
You got to heal the triggers. I mean, this has been a journey for the last couple of years of really healing the emotional triggers that used to hurt me. And if something is triggering you, where there's an external event and you feel a reaction quickly, I'm not saying you can't be upset about something or be frustrated or not like something, but when it triggers you to react from a fight or flight standpoint, that means your nervous system has not healed a wound that was once opened. So when we have a wound and it stays open for decades sometimes, it's always going to be affected when someone's poking it or when something happens and it pokes it. This happened to me for so long. And it was a powerless mindset because I had wounds that I was unwilling to face and heal. So therefore, I was still a loving, happy, fun guy. But when I felt the trigger of abuse, abandonment, taken advantage of, I would get in this defense mode. I would get in this reaction mode. I would not be conscious in my communication. I would respond in frustrated ways. And it doesn't mean I have to like what's happening, but it's our response, which is important, and to be aware of our triggers. So really, there's nothing that Martha has done that has triggered me that I can think of, because we do emotional coaching individually and we do it together as well. We work on these things together. We process them together. We heal together. We mend together. And it allows for peace and harmony in the relationship. And I probably wouldn't be on set if she was making out with a guy. I wouldn't put myself in that situation.
Know thyself?
Yeah, I would just be like, okay, have a great day. And I wouldn't want to be sitting there watching it for like 8 hours, because it's a long day of doing that. But I would just trust her. I would trust her. And if she breaks trust, that's her being out of integrity. Just like if I broke the trust, that's on me. I would have to live with that. That does not feel good. I know what that feels like. She would have to live with that. That is suffering internally. Living a lie, being out of integrity is suffering. And the more you build that, you do that, you lose confidence in yourself. You lose the ability to be authentic. And so we had these conversations all the time. If she does something out of integrity, I'll eventually find out about it. And then we'll address it. We'll see if there's a way to process it together and make things work, or we'll move on. And we're both clear that that's what will happen. And so why am I trying to cling on to something and be so obsessive and jealous and possessive of a person? Because that's not going to help bring peace and love and harmony in the relationship. So doing that hurts a relationship, so why do it? If you're doing it to think, well, I don't want someone to cheat on me or to see another man or to be outside without me there, then it's like, if you aren't confident with yourself in the relationship, then you got to take a look at that. And that was me for many, many years in many relationships. And so this is not a judgment or a make wrong of anyone. This is just, you got to learn to face yourself and know where you're at. And I don't see a world where you can do everything on your own at a high level. I just don't know any great athlete that made it there without a coach. When Jordan and LeBron and Kobe won their first championship, they didn't say, thank you, coaches, for the last 25, 30 years for getting me here. I don't need a coach anymore because I figured it out now. I'm going to go win the championship next year on my own without a coach. No athlete has ever said this and executed at a high level without a coach. Most people cannot do anything great on their own without support, coaches, mentors, guides. And especially when it comes to our emotions, I just think it's so valuable to have support, whether this is a personal friend, an accountability buddy, a coach, a therapist, a guide. I just think it's so important to have someone who can give you support and guide you through your emotions. That's why I've got a coach, and I see her almost every 2 weeks. Even when things are great, I keep going because I want to elevate to the next level.
I love that. And it aligns with your number one priority of
Yes.
making sure that you're very in tune, aligned. So you've actually mentioned multiple times about identifying the traumas from childhood and not feeling enough. If you don't mind actually sharing some of those,
Yeah.
because again, like the thing that, one of many things that I freaking adore about you is how open and vulnerable you are about your childhood and how important it is, because there isn't enough men. Like I sit here right now, I have a whole show called Women of Impact. So I'm always talking about all the things we've been taught that's actually hurt us, but we don't often ask the men. We don't often say, like, in today's interview, by the way, it's been so profound for me, because what I really wanted to do is show that even if there is someone's either in a relationship where a guy maybe isn't showing up the way that they want them to, whether they've dated guys and they've just been, dismissive, they kind of just use them for sex, whatever, it doesn't necessarily make them bad people. It may just make them wounded people.
100%.
And the way, if we can understand that and really communicate, I think that we end up bringing the genders together instead of it being, well, he cheated on me, well, she's a bitch, well, she's a, there's no more finger pointing.
Well, this is something I love to talk about. Not my wounds or anything, but I just believe a lot of men are suffering. They're suffering in silence internally, and they're causing loud noises externally through their suffering, through their anger, reaction, their harm, their just what they're doing in the world. Most of the mass shootings are from men, and these men are suffering. I'm not saying what they do is okay. I'm not agreeing with any of their actions, but I can see where it's coming from. I can see the anger and the suffering. And where does anger come from? It comes from a wound. It comes from a wound that has yet to be healed. And so when you feel so much pain inside and you have not figured out how to mend and create new meaning from past memories, that's when you start to react and unleash in different ways, whether it be in intimacy and relationships. You close off, you can't look at your partner in the eyes, you can't be vulnerable, you can't cry in front of your partner, you can't do certain things because you don't feel safe, because you feel afraid. So it comes back to the triggers. I believe that the wounds cause the most pain if we don't know how to mend them. So I'll just, briefly go over some of the stuff with me. One of my first memories is of sexual abuse from a man that I did not know in a bathroom. Babysitter's house. Her son was about 16 or 17, took me to the bathroom and sexually abused me. That's one of my first.
5 at the time.
It's 5.
Right?
It's one of my first memories. If you don't have a way to heal that and you just keep living life, that memory is going to keep replaying, or you're going to somehow block a part of yourself.
And how long did you not tell anyone about
25 years. So 25 years of that. But it was also that stacked on a lot of the stuff. And this is not to say I had, more trauma than other people. This is not a trauma competition game. But just to give context, my brother went to prison when I was 8 for 4.5 years. So I would visit a prison cell, not a cell, but the visiting room, almost every weekend for 4.5 years. And so from 8 to 12 and a half, I really wasn't allowed to have friends. I didn't have any friends. Because growing up in a small town in Ohio, this didn't really happen in my neighborhood. And so other parents wouldn't let their kids hang out with me. And so I don't blame my brother for any of this. This is just the scenario that happened, right? And what I experienced. And it was all beautiful things for me for my future. But that was kind of tormenting, for most of my childhood until I was 13. I experienced a couple of these things. And I also just had a very unstable home life. My parents didn't show love to each other. I knew they loved us kids, but they weren't able to show each other love. And in fact, it was a lot of passive aggressive energy, a lot of yelling, screaming, slamming, physical fights. And so I just felt like I was afraid always, a low level of fear about what's going to happen to me. And I was in the bottom of my class, so I didn't have any skills in school. So I was academically just struggling. And so I was afraid to just stand in front of a group of peers without them laughing at me because I really couldn't read and write until I got to be older. I still struggle reading aloud today. And so this was just part of the childhood that made me driven to succeed, to try to fulfill a hole in a wound inside of me that I was not enough. Again, there are 3 main fears that cause us to doubt ourselves in life, in relationships, in our career, whatever it might be. 3 main fears. And self-doubt, I believe, is the killer of all dreams. And these 3 fears cause us to doubt ourselves the most. This is the fear of failure, the fear of success, and the fear of judgment. And at the root of each one of these fears is I am not enough. And when we can go back to the memories where the wounds are that we have not healed yet, and start to mend those and create new meaning, then we can start to turn I am not enough to I am enough. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey of healing. And so 25 years, I held on to really all that pain, all the shame, all the pain, and those wounds drove me to be successful, drove me to get angry and be jealous when girlfriends would do certain things, drove me to be worried and stressed out, drove me to stay up hours every night ruminating, and I didn't know why. I couldn't sleep. And it wasn't until within days after I opened up about sexual trauma for the first time. Again, the powerless mindset is you conceal past pains. You aren't willing to reveal these things. That means you're ashamed. That doesn't mean you have to reveal them to the world, but you need to be okay with revealing them to someone. And when I finally opened up about one traumatic experience, the sexual abuse, I finally was able to sleep at night without staying up for hours every night. I could finally put my head down and sleep within minutes. And it completely shifted everything. And so it's been a 10-year healing journey of going back and healing different memories that caused me to feel resentful, angry, jealous, frustrated, shameful, all these things. And it's probably going to be a continual journey forever as life happens and events that happen and we create new meaning. But when I was able to go back and really, I did a process 2 years ago where I had a photo of my 5-year-old self on my screensaver for about 6 months. And I had a new relationship with my 5-year-old self, which might sound a little weird, but I parented myself the way that I needed to. I parented the wounds and the memories the way that I needed to back then, right now. And I would do sessions with myself, as weird as this sounds. I would do session with my 5-year-old self, imagining my 5-year-old self is standing right in front of me. I talked to him. How you feeling, little Lewis? What's going on? What are you worried about? What are you scared of? And he was able to express what he was afraid of for the first time, as opposed to holding on to it and just trying to be tougher and just figure life out. And as I created a new relationship with my inner child, I was able to hug myself and embrace myself and say, I got you. I'm so proud of you for how you overcame these things. I'm so inspired by what you went through, and you got us here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing what it took to get us here, even though you were confused and scared and not sure why you were even alive and not sure why these things were happening to you. Thank you. You got us here. I'm so proud of how strong you were. And now you can let it go. And I brought him into my heart spiritually and reconnected from a place of healing and wholeness. And I started doing that at my 12-year-old self when I would steal all the time, and started to have a new relationship with my 12-year-old self. So I had a photo of myself when I was 12. I did this with my 17-year-old self. I've done this all the way through to all the past 10 years up until now. And it has given me so much peace of going back and healing those wounds and creating new meaning around why those events happened. You know, Man's Search for Meaning is one of my favorite books with Viktor Frankl, and he lived one of the happiest, joyful, fulfilling lives after going through one of the most horrific things in the concentration camp. And all this comes back to is creating new meaning from these memories. It doesn't mean...
How do you do that though? Like, how do you actually go back? 'Cause, like, as you were talking, I was trying so hard not to cry because it breaks my heart to think about that 5-year-old boy right now and all the trauma he's having to maybe deal with, the shame, the not speaking up, that's going to be 25 years before he even recognizes it, that then has all these turbulent other relationships, lies, cheats, and blah, blah, blah. And we look at him as like, well, he's a problem child, you know, or he's just a player. And you just dismiss him. And I don't know the stats. I'm going to make them up. It's something like 1 in 5 guys.
1 in 6.
1 in 6.
Sexually abused, yeah.
And then how many people say it? Like,
Very few,
you're almost like the only guy that
very
I
few.
know has been so open about it.
Very few.
And so how on earth did you create meaning for that 5-year-old boy?
I mean, again, I don't think I could have done it on my own. That's why I had emotional coaches, therapists. I did meditation retreats. I did lots of different healing modalities. I mean, I've tried so many different things in the past 10 years, from breathing exercises to Wim Hof and cold rivers in Poland, to going to India for weeks at a time to study meditation, to neuroscience meditation with Joe Dispenza, to different therapists, to emotional intelligence workshops. I felt like for me, it's been a journey of each modality adding something to me and unlocking a new opportunity for growth. There's not some one thing that's like cured everything, and it's always a journey of healing. It's never a one-time moment. But the thing that has worked for me is the consistent emotional coaching every couple of weeks. And I see the power of preventative care, like going to the gym and making sure that the bigger my platform gets, the more opportunities I have for people to critique me. I want to prepare myself to not be emotionally triggered. I want to prepare myself for potential letdowns and not being exhausted for weeks because I don't know how to manage my emotions. And so emotional coaching and therapy has supported me in just constantly showing up for myself and processing it. Here's the thing, once you are aware of it and you face it, you've got to practice it, because the nervous system will bring you back into stress. And so I practiced this in a previous relationship where I was in couples therapy trying to make the relationship work. And at one point, I was like, told the coach, I go, I'm done. I got to get out of this relationship. I cannot deal with this stress anymore. It doesn't work for me. I'm done. And she was just like, I don't think you're ready yet.
To break up?
Yes. And I go, oh, does this person just want more money from me? You know, I was just like, I was like angry. I was like, but I don't want to be in this anymore. I don't like this anymore. And she said, I hear you, and we still have work to do. And if you get out now before you've really mended certain things, and you can create peace in the chaos, as opposed to running away from the chaos, but create peace in the chaos, not abandoning yourself in the stress, you'll probably, most likely, repeat the pattern.
Interesting.
The next person, you still haven't faced it fully.
And it needs to be in the relationship while you do
That
it.
was her
That was fascinating.
strategy, right? And I was like, I just want freedom. I want peace. I want to get out of this. I can't deal with this anymore. It doesn't work for me. She goes, I get it, but you still are abandoning yourself in the relationship. So when are you going to learn to not abandon yourself? And just saying, I'm done, without facing the problems head on. She's like, you cannot buy peace. You must become peace. So you don't have to stay in this forever. You're not trapped. You don't have to be in this for the next year. But you got to learn certain things in the face of adversity besides running away from it. And I go, oh, I'm so done with this though. I just want to be out of it. And I think it was probably the best thing for me. I'm not saying this for everyone, because I think if you are really afraid of your life, you should get out of a relationship.
Right.
Don't stay in anything if you are truly in fear. But for me, I decided to give it a couple more months until I was able to stand for my inner child in every moment in a conscious, calm way. So when she would scream or react or not speak to me for 3 days or whatever she was, or make me wrong or judge me or put me down, I just say, you know, this isn't in alignment with what we've agreed to in our couples therapy of the vision that I have for our relationship, of loving communication. So I'm going to remove myself from this situation. I'm going to go in the other room calmly, and you let me know when you're ready to talk. But this doesn't work for me, for the vision I have anymore.
When you started to change then and talk to her in that way,
She fucking hated it.
I literally was about to say guaranteed.
She tried to punish me more for not giving in, for not giving her what she wanted, for not doing, for not be like, oh, it's okay, I'll give you what you want. Oh, I'm sorry, okay, here's this, here's money, here's this, or whatever you need. She did not like me being a loving, passionate, wise man.
So how on earth, because you even said, like your therapist said, you know, you need to learn how to create
Yes.
peace within chaos. So you're trying to create peace, but it actually then creates more chaos.
Of course, which makes you want to go back to your old way of
Right,
being.
yeah.
And I just was like, because I got to a place where I was like, all right, I am clear that this relationship will either work out the way I need it to with my vision of a conscious relationship, or we won't be together. And either way, I'm fine with that. And so I just got to be so, but I was like, but I will not allow myself to abandon myself ever again in this relationship or any relationship, because that's not working for me. It's causing a pain in my chest consistently, and I don't want this pain anymore. And so the more I did this, there was a period of time in therapy where this ball of pain that I had for years disintegrated.
And you're touching your heart. Was it really?
It was like right in my chest. It was like this pain that would kind of come and go. Some weeks it was more intense. Other weeks it wasn't there. It almost felt like a clenching in my throat as well, because I felt trapped. I felt emotionally trapped. And this pain was intensifying. And there was one day in therapy where it was like after months of, again, facing myself, of going back and creating new meaning, of reflecting on all my parents' behaviors and their model of love and relationships. That's where it all stems from. I realized that I was a free man, but I never felt free. And the first moment I met with my coach, she was like, what's your intention for our time working together? And I said, I want peace, freedom, and clarity, because I feel like I have none of it in this relationship. And all I want is peace, freedom, and clarity. And I wasn't being those things because I felt like I was a trapped human being emotionally. And it wasn't until I was able to mend and heal these wounds from the past where I became peace, free, and clear. I was becoming that, and it disintegrated. That old memory, that old trauma disintegrated throughout my body, and it felt like a lightness. It felt like I was free. So the next time these events would happen in the relationship, I would just say, I didn't have the trigger anymore. Again, the wound, when it happens, I'd be triggered and say, oh, how can I fix it? So now when a scream, an attack, a make wrong, a judgment, a blame came at me, I was able to see it from a different point of view. And I could look at it and say, okay, I don't like this. I don't like someone judging me or blaming or screaming at me, but I'm not reactive. As before, I was reactive. And now I'm calm because I am a free man emotionally. I am a clear man. I am a peaceful man. So I do not need to react and give in to one person who's blaming, making wrong, screaming at me, judging me, comparing me, whatever. All the things, giving me the cold shoulder, the silent treatment, everything that used to cause me stress and a trigger. Now I notice it and say, okay, that's just who she's being. That's who she is. And that's out of alignment with what I want to create for a conscious relationship. She knows what my vision is for our relationship. She knows what a conscious relationship looks like. And she's not willing to live up to that standard that I want to live up to now. And I was just being a stand for my inner child and my vision of a conscious life and a conscious relationship. And there are certain distinctions of a conscious relationship. And if someone isn't agreeing to that, then that doesn't make them bad or wrong. They're just not what I want. And that's okay. So it's learning to accept someone and say, okay, we're not the right fit, or accept them and say we are. And the journey of healing, it's funny, I got a message from, I was telling you before offline that I've been to many prisons, because I would visit prisons a lot when I was a kid to visit my brother. And I've been here in LA, there's some prisons nearby. I've been a few times because my book, The Masking Masculinity, has been kind of shared out throughout some prisons. And I believe that, when men heal, the world heals. There's a lot of men who are suffering and in pain, which causes them to do harm to others, causes them to do things out of alignment with the law and all sorts of things, and the harmony of human beings. And all these things get to be taken accounted for and responsibility for. But if we want the world to really evolve and change in a place of peace and love, then we got to get men to find peace and love within themselves and harmony. And I just got a message I did a speech to all the prisons during the pandemic about the masking masculinity. They were streaming it live to all the prisons about these different masks that men wear that cause them to project an image in life, relationships, friends, sports, everything, business, to fit in, to belong, to feel accepted, and to feel enough. Because most of the time we put on masks as men because we believe if someone truly knew everything about me, they would not love me. If my woman truly knew this about me, she wouldn't accept me. She wouldn't love me. So we have this fear of not being enough. And I got a message from my friend Scott Budnick, who runs these prison programs for men. He sent me a text with a 6-page letter from an inmate who watched this. And the text said, I met this kid a couple years ago when he got into prison. He was 21. He was a part of a white gang, and he had a swastika tattooed to his chest. Oh, God. And he's been in solitary confinement for 2 years. That means you get an hour a day outside, and then you're alone for 23 hours. And he said, he sent me this 6-page letter. He just showed me a text of the letter. He sent it to me. And in the letter, he said, I dropped out of the gang. I'm starting to heal my heart. And he said, when he asked him why, he said, Lewis Howes and the Mask of Masculinity. I've read this book 4 times. I'm finally realizing why I was so reactive in life, why the things that caused me to react and do the things that I did wrong. So for me, the greatness mindset really stems down to learning how to navigate and heal your heart, heal your emotions, because these things work together. Our thoughts and our emotions affect our actions. And if we are living in so much pain, we're going to hurt our partners, our friends, our family. We're going to do bad things to humanity if we don't have love in our hearts and peace in our hearts. And so that's why, I'm on a mission to support all human beings in finding that healing and peace, because I know what's available on the other side, and I know how much pain and suffering it is when you don't have it. And like you said, 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused, but most never talk about that, let alone talk about any of their problems. And when I speak in front of rooms, it's usually about 50-50 men and women. And I'll ask the men of the room to raise their hand if they have one guy friend that they can open up to about anything. And if they talk about it once a month about their problems, their challenges, their insecurities, their fears, one. Most of the room doesn't raise their hand. Maybe a couple guys do. Mm-hmm. And I say, are you guys a part of a church group that meets like once a month? And they kind of laugh and say, yeah, where it's like a safe environment for men to talk about it. And I say, women, how many of you talk to a girlfriend once a day about your insecurities, your problems, your challenges, your fears, your doubts, your marital issues, whatever? And most of the women kind of laugh and raise their hand like every day, like a girlfriend or your mom or sister. Imagine doing this once a month. How would that make you feel if you just didn't talk about these things? Imagine only doing it once a year. Imagine never doing it ever. How would it make you feel if you never were able to share your fears, your pains, your insecurities, your challenges? How would it make you feel? And kind of all the women kind of like joke and laugh. They're like, it'd drive me crazy and I'd probably kill myself. And I'm like, you make a joke about it, but that's what men do. It drives them mad inside, and that's why men commit suicide way more than women. That's why there's 2 million inmates in prison that are men, way more than women. And men suffer so much more with addiction, drugs, alcohol, to try to deal with the pain and the shame and the insecurity because they are not able to speak it to one human being without feeling like this person will not accept me, they'll make fun of me, they'll laugh at me, they'll beat me up, they'll kill me, whatever it is. And so it's just trying to allow people to go through a process of, again, mending the memories of the past, because they're memories. And a lot of times we build the story up bigger than it was. I'm not saying it wasn't horrible or sad, but we tend to ruminate on the bad parts more. And when we can create new meaning and create peace from that meaning, then we are free. And so this has been the journey for me, and it's a constant journey.
Wow, that was so amazing. Oh God. Do you think that people can do that then while they're in a relationship? Because I'm really just projecting. Number one, I definitely think every woman listening to this, please, for the love of God, share it with your partner or share it with a guy in your life. Because even if it's a brother, right? Like, I just think what you're saying is so profound. And I so often take a female stance of like how we see things and how the struggles that we come with. And I've done so many relationship episodes where it's like, you know, the guy's broken my heart, or he's, you know, like took advantage of me, and
lied to me, and
he
this and that.
used me.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm very much about ladies. How do we make sure that we don't just give ourselves over without having some steps, without setting boundaries? Like, trying to really help women create boundaries for themselves. To what you were saying about it, right? Like, to show up in integrity. But the flip side of it for the guys, honestly, I'm just as compassionate and just as empathetic. And I am so honored that you're talking about this on this show, because I think it hopefully will help us not necessarily, like I said, point the finger and go, well, he's just an asshole, right? And then having that maybe compassion. Now, here's the problem, though, with that. It doesn't mean that you should just let them abuse you, be a bad boyfriend, or, you know, have a
It may not be the right relationship anymore.
Right, exactly.
When I got clear that I got clear on what is the vision that I want for a relationship. What is my vision? I want a conscious relationship. And what does that mean? I want a relationship where when there is an argument or disagreement, we communicate consciously. That means there's no screaming, there's no passive aggressive energy, there's no cold shoulder for even an hour or days, which is what I experienced in every relationship. And I allowed it. So it's me, I wasn't living into my vision because I was wounded and afraid. And so the fear and the insecurity and the wound caused me to act out of alignment with my vision. So once I got clear that my vision is to have a conscious relationship, that means conscious relationship with myself first. That means I must be in full ownership of who I am first before I can have a conscious relationship with someone else. That means conscious communication. That means conscious collaboration. That means conscious agreements. It's not, well, if you don't do this, then it's over. It's, what are we agreeing to together? And can we have even a third party witness our agreements so that no one can say, I never said this 2 years later. Oh, actually we did, and we agreed on this. As opposed to, this is the way it is, and it's my way, the highway. Okay, well, if that's what someone else agrees to, cool. But this is a conscious relationship. This is the vision I have for my relationship. And you may be in a relationship that doesn't work, and you can still heal in the relationship and create conscious relationship together, but you may find out you're not the right match for each other. And that's hard to face. I'm not telling people to break up, but what I am saying, if you're single, make sure you develop a conscious relationship with yourself and get clear on your relationship vision. I got super clear that this is the relationship I want to have before I met Martha. I said, this is what I want. This is what I'm creating. This is what it will take from me. You know, if I want to be these, create this, I need to become it for myself as well. And then I need to be so clear that this is my boundaries and I'm not going to abandon myself. And so I was saying all these things with Martha when we got into our relationship. And she was like, I love it. This is amazing. And here's where I'm coming from. And I said, cool, I accept that. But if she was like, you know, I want to have a different lifestyle, or I want to live in, I don't know, Mexico full time, I'd be like, well, our lifestyle isn't in alignment with my vision. That doesn't mean you're a bad person or, something's wrong with you. It just means we are out of alignment. And so can we create an agreement? Am I okay with living in Mexico a month out of the year? And I have to check in and not abandon myself. If I'm not, I shouldn't be in this relationship.
Isn't it funny how we convince ourselves that one of us is right and one of us is wrong?
It's not about right and wrong. It's about, are we aligned and a good match?
But we do, though, in those
know.
moments, if we haven't done the work like you're saying,
Yeah.
of course, it ends up going to, but this is what I want. And
We do that because we're afraid to be alone. And we want the other person to just give into our fears and our needs. This is what I need. And if they're not going to do that, they don't care about me. They don't love me. They're not here for me. They're selfish. And then we live in manipulation of someone else because we're afraid and insecure. As opposed to just saying, okay, that's not what they want for their life. That's okay. 8 billion people, you don't need to force one person into your way. And I'm not saying like everything's going to be perfect and everything's going to be smooth the whole time, but it's finding as many agreements as possible to minimize frustration, to minimize arguments and anger and upset. That's all it is. It's just being clear on here's my expectations and what I want to create. Is that your expectation? Cool. Now we have an agreement around this thing together. So we're clear. There's less stress around it. And I think a lot of people just don't have those conversations. And then, they didn't do this for me and they didn't do this for me. And it's like, are they supposed to? Were you clear about this?
that's so true. You actually mentioned manipulation. How much did you have to look at how your girlfriends were manipulating and you manipulating them? It maybe inadvertently sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure we are both manipulating each other. Again, when you're wounded, you're in some type of, I don't think it was like intentional manipulation. It was like wounded and your fears are just causing you to be less conscious. And so you need to protect yourself. You need someone to not do something they did so you feel safe. It's a form of manipulation because you're not comfortable with who you are. So you're needing someone to change to make you happy. Where I don't need Martha to change at all. I am happy. She is happy. We come together to add to our happiness. But when we get in a relationship, not being a happy human being and expecting someone else to do everything in order to make us feel safe and protected and meet our needs, that's just the wrong way of going about it. We need to meet our own needs and fulfill our own happiness and support the other person in their needs, but not be their needs. That is a recipe for pain.
Dude, that's so powerful. And this is the one thing that I'm like repeating over and over. It's like, no, you may not need a man, but you want a man.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just say what you want? And right. And it's like, we so worry about if I say that I need something, am I appearing needy? So that means I shouldn't ask for it at all. But instead,
Yeah.
like, just actually own that you want it.
Yeah, I think exactly. It's not about needing. I don't need a relationship. I want a conscious, healthy, loving, abundant relationship. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So that I'm not going to jump into a relationship that isn't that. I'm not going to be in that. It doesn't mean there's not going to be adversities of life.
Right, sure.
But the intention is to build a relationship that wants to create that. That is the vision of our relationship. If I needed a relationship to feel loved, then that's the wrong way to go about it. I get to feel loved and be loved first. I get to love my life first. And I didn't fully love myself in previous relationships, and they didn't fully love themselves. And so we were just two wounded people in every relationship of, I need this, you need that, you don't make me happy, I'm scared, you're jealous, because we're wounded. And so it's just a process of, and maybe that works for people, but that's just not what I wanted anymore.
Is that where the fireworks come from? Because there's so many people in relationships, and you're smiling because I'm guessing that you've had this, where it's like, it's when you argue, it's shit is hitting the fan, the house is burning down, and then as soon as it's over, you make out and you have sex like rabbits, and then
you sweep it under the rug and you repeat it 2 weeks later.
Exactly.
Man, it's just a lot. I mean, again,
Is that the wounds,
I raised
though?
my hand because this was most of my life. So I have compassion and empathy because this is who I once was. But it's just a lot of trauma bonding. And there's a lot of heightened emotions when there's traumas that you're bonding to with someone else. Or when someone is there to fulfill a trauma that you need fixed, a hole that you need met, filling. And if it doesn't be met consistently, then it's more trauma and more energy and more fighting and explosion. But what I've learned is, for me, that doesn't bring harmony to my life. When there's explosions and fighting and fires, that is not harmony. You're burning yourself down emotionally, up and down, up and down. It's a lot of wasted energy. It's exhausting. And it's not the life or the vision I have for a conscious relationship. Again, if that's the relationship and the life you want, then know that comes with certain consequences. That comes with arguments, that comes with mistrust, that comes with your partner going out and you being jealous and insecure and then fighting and then making up and this whole cycle. That's just not the life I want anymore. It's wasted energy. And when you're clear on your mission and your purpose, which is the first step in my book, which is about getting clear on a meaningful mission, you want to eliminate anything that doesn't support the mission, because you realize I could be gone any moment. This life can be fractured in any moment. And why am I wasting so much energy going up and down with one person where we're out of alignment? It's really about alignment. Doesn't mean they're wrong or bad. Doesn't mean they're right and good. It means, are you aligned? And do you want the best for the other person? If you want the best for them, why would you get upset at them? Why would you scream at them if you want the best for them? If you truly love them in a conscious level, why would you scream consistently and say, you did this wrong? This wrong to what? Unless you've agreed on it, there's nothing wrong. Them living their life. So if they did something, if Martha cheated on me, I would not scream at her. I would be sad, I would be hurt, I would be disappointed and let down. I'd feel a wide range of emotions. But what does screaming do for me? What does it do for the moment? What does holding a grudge against someone do for me and my mission? It pulls me away from my mission. It pulls me away from my health and my harmony with myself. I may have moments of needing to release and let go. I may need to process it. I may need to, do my own techniques to really get out the emotion of anger or sadness or frustration. But me screaming at someone over and over for what they did to me, that only goes so far. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, is it useful towards my life? And I want peace and harmony. That is my highest currency, is peace, harmony. And it's just creating a life that supports me with that as much as possible.
So I've processed all of this as well. And I used to be the girl that when in my first relationship before Tom, I was with a guy for about 3 to 4 years. And it was very manipulative. It was very, like screaming and then, the hot sex, all of that stuff. And so what I realized was when I started to do the work, like what you're saying, right? You start to get utter clarity in your behavior, in how you're showing up. And then you start to go, why am I doing that? And so when I met Tom and we started really working on our relationship, and he was the man for me, I realized that I was using crying and tears as a manipulation. Yeah.
It's true.
And I realized that. And so what I started to do is I actually started to walk out the room when I started to cry, to the point where he's like, babe, why can't you cry in front of me? And I would say to him, because in a moment where we're arguing, if I was upset about something else, I'd happily cry in front of him. But in the moment of me and him arguing, my emotional state says cry. But in that moment, I know what it's doing to him. And the truth is that I don't want him to back down because he feels bad that I'm upset.
Because then he's got to give in and take care of you.
Exactly. And I know that doesn't serve our relationship. So if I know that him backing off doesn't serve our relationship, I don't want to manipulate him with my tears. So I've said to him, sometimes I actually need to walk away so I can cry, so I can process how you've impacted me. And then I can come back and articulate it to you instead of using the tears to kind of make you act in a certain way.
I think that's wise. And I also want to point out that, you should be, I think women should be open to cry in front of their men. Of course,
yeah, absolutely.
But I think when it happens on like every 3 days because you didn't get something you wanted and there's a breakdown, then it starts to feel like a little bit manipulative in that sense, where it's, the man doesn't feel like he can actually say what's on his mind. He just has to take care of you. And he wants you to be happy. The man wants you to be happy. He doesn't want you to be sad and crying. Right. No man lives their life thinking, I hope my woman cries today and is mad at me. Yeah. That doesn't happen. It's not an intentional act. And so, and I know from our last conversation, You know, you said you hadn't cried in a long time. This was about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Year and a half ago, I think. You were like, I haven't cried in a long time. I think you said, I don't remember the last time I cried.
I've really been working on it. And so I've really, like, even on this episode, I was allowing myself, but it's a conscious effort. It's a bloody conscious
Well, when you
effort.
block something for so long, you got to be conscious about it.
Yeah.
You got to allow yourself to feel.
I think part of it also was my ex-boyfriend, where I was like, no man's ever going to see me cry
Never
again.
gonna hurt me again.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah,
No.
100%.
And how's that show for you?
Yeah, it didn't quite
How's
work,
that working
right?
for you?
So
I mean, it works in certain external results, but it doesn't give you the internal harmony that you truly want long term.
Oh, okay, so here's the truth. As a businesswoman, it does serve me.
100%.
It serves me to be able to regulate my emotions. And in my personal life, I've used it to then be able to serve me, the emotional regulation thing. So that is super important. But then let's talk about also guys. Sometimes it serves guys to walk in and be an alpha male and to be strong and to put your chest out, right? Depending on what you're trying to achieve, it could be useful. Football, right?
Yeah,
you
course.
walk out on the pitch, if you walk with your head like hung and you kind of don't look confident, you're losing. So I understand why it can actually serve you. But also, it then can absolutely not serve you with, if you walk into a relationship, right, with your chest pushed out and you do that with a woman, I think that would end up causing some friction and, you know, intimidation, which I don't think is healthy.
Well, here's the thing. I've heard so many times over and over again that women want their husbands or their partners, their men in their lives, to be more vulnerable with them. I've heard this many, many times over the last 5-6 years since I got into the masculinity work. And then I would be, you know, men would come to me and say, okay, Lewis, like, I'm going to go and I'm going to finally be vulnerable with my wife. She's been asking me for years that I'm too closed off, I'm too stoic, I don't show emotion, I never am sensitive. And I've always felt like I've had to protect the family. I've had to make sure I'm taking care of things and making sure she's taken care of. And I've got to be in a different state. I can't be sensitive in those moments, but I'm going to try it. And then they go and try and they let their guard down in sense of opening their heart. They start to feel a little sensitive, or when there's a breakdown, they allow themselves to process and cry in front of their woman. And a lot of them have come back to me and said, she's not able to receive it with me being vulnerable. She can't see me cry. It turned her off. She felt afraid. She felt like I wasn't protecting her and all these things. So when a man feels like a woman is actually going against them when they're being vulnerable, they're going to say, never again am I going to show vulnerabilities with my woman again. If she can't handle it, why would I do this? She's been telling me for years she wants this. I'm doing it and she can't handle it. Then men were going to go back into, I'm just going to take care of things. I'm going to be the protector and provider, and I'm not going to show emotion. And so I also think it's important for women to really take a look in the mirror and say, can I receive my man if he cries in front of me? Mm-hmm. Can I receive him? In a previous relationship, I cried once and she laughed at me. And I remember saying, thank God I'm confident enough in myself that I'm going to keep crying. In a movie or in a sad time or whatever, I'm going to keep crying because I don't care if she cries at me. I don't care. But if I wasn't at a place where I was confident in myself yet, I'd be like, okay, I'm never going to cry again. Oh, you're right. If you're laughing at me, why would I cry? And so you've got to be, I think women get the opportunity to be conscious as well and say, could I truly, if my man of 10 years that I'm married to, or my boyfriend of 2 years who I've never seen cry, if he cried, I mean like a little tear or an ugly cry, could I be a loving presence for him? And would I actually love him more? Would I be more turned on? Would I be excited about having an emotionally evolved man in my life and not just a single emotion man? Mm-hmm. Would that excite me or would it scare me? And if it scares you, then you got to take a look in the mirror because you're influencing. I'm not saying it's a man's responsibility, but you're influencing a man to be closed off more. And more closed off men cause more harm. So you just got to ask yourself, what is inside of me that isn't allowing for a man to be emotional in front of me? And I get it's all timing and situations, and you want to be aware of that, but just ask yourself that. Again, it's not right and wrong, but if women want men to be more emotionally vulnerable and sensitive, they've got to be able to receive it with care and not make fun of them, not look down on it, and not think they're weak when they're sensitive.
God, this is such a trick. I thank you. I love this conversation because it's very tricky. I can actually imagine in that moment, right, where the woman is like, she laughs at you, like, we can dismiss her. What a fucking bitch. Like, how can she be so mean? But at the same
But I
time,
have compassion for it too.
what if she was brought up with a father that was super stoic, and
I
in
have
that
complete
moment
compassion.
where she's just actually like, oh shit, I don't know how to respond, and her reaction of laughing is automatic, but not because she actually finds it funny.
Right. It's funny because we had a conversation, like, I don't know, an hour afterwards, and she goes, listen, I know I'm not supposed to laugh and think it's weak, but just I've been so conditioned to think that a man crying is weak. And I was just like in shock that you cried. And again, it doesn't mean it's okay or it's right or any of these things, but I am able to look from out of myself and have compassion for that, because I know that her father left her when she was younger and she never felt like she trusted any men, and all these things. So it doesn't mean it's okay, and it doesn't mean it's, but it's just, all right, this is where you're at in your level of your relationship and how you respond to vulnerability. And it was another reason why I was like, okay, this relationship isn't for me, you know. This happened in multiple previous relationships. You know, it's like when I would be vulnerable, I would get made fun of, laughed, or wouldn't be received well by almost every woman that I've been with. And so, again, why would men open up and be vulnerable if they're going to get laughed at, if they're not going to be received well, if they're going to be made fun of? It doesn't feel good. And so when I'm calling out to all women listening and watching. Figure out what it is inside. I know you say you want your man to be more sensitive and vulnerable, but when it happens, you've got to really honor the space. Honor the sacredness of your man being vulnerable if he's never been vulnerable. Lean in, comfort him, guide him. You don't have to say anything. Just hold him, touch him. Say, I'm here for you. I got you. You're safe. Because a man doesn't feel safe typically when he's vulnerable if he's not been trained on how to feel safe in that environment. So allow your man to release decades of pain in front of you. It might be a small tear. It might be a moment of something, but that moment could open his heart and start the process of healing and bringing harmony to the relationship.
God, I think it's because if I can just project of why women may get uncomfortable when a guy is vulnerable, because I actually think it's very important. There's so much fear that we've been conditioned as women to see men as the stoicness, as the person that's going to save me. Now, here's the tricky thing, Lewis. I absolutely want my husband to save me. Someone's breaking into the house. So
100%.
So
it's situational.
Yeah, but
you want to feel safe when there's, an attack.
Yes.
But when there's a sensitive moment and you're on the couch and there's something coming up for you, there's no one attacking you, you've got to allow the man to let his guard down and be vulnerable.
Correct. And I think what we end up doing is going, oh, he's vulnerable. Shit, he can't save me from the person.
He can't take care of me. He can't pay the bills. He can't provide for me. All these things.
And here's the thing. It's not, I think it's just the confusion we have that it has to be one or the
100%,
other.
I get it.
Even when I talk to Tom about my own career, right? It's like I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years. I was taking care of him, putting clothes out and cooking for him. I wanted 4 children. And now I don't cook for him at all and I never do the laundry. So it's like I had evolved, but what he prided himself on is that we're the couple that can navigate changes, but also navigate masculine and feminine to the point where if you think of masculine and feminine as being a spectrum, right? I'm actually more in the middle. I can bounce between being more masculine and being more feminine. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. And so can Tom. And so because we both can, we actually understand when he's standing in his feminine or he's standing in his masculine, and then vice versa. And now it's not an either or. It's not, well, hang on a minute. If he's vulnerable, it means he can't protect me. Or if he's protecting me, then he can't be vulnerable.
Exactly. And I think, women just got to learn how to process that and receive that and know that. Now, listen, if your man's like in breakdown every day and crying constantly, then you may be some concern there and he may need some support in getting out of that. But just the normal range of emotions that human beings have and laughing, loving, crying. If you don't feel like you're capable of doing that, you're shutting something off inside of you. If you don't feel safe with your most intimate partner who's supposed to love and accept you the most, if you're not accepted by them, then who in the world will accept you? So imagine the fears and insecurities that are tied to that if the person you give the most trust to cannot receive your emotions. And I'm not saying screaming emotions and hysterical emotions and anger emotions. I'm saying like your vulnerabilities, your sadness, like your fears, you know what I mean? And I just think that's something we can all work on. Men receiving their women better, women receiving their men better. But it starts with looking at yourself, facing yourself first.
And especially if you, like your story where you were saying that you were brought up with parents that weren't necessarily like emotionally intelligent enough to be able to help guide you. And I believe they were 20 years old when they had.
They were 19 when they had my brother. I mean, again, they didn't know how to love each other.
So thinking about that, and then thinking about you as this little 5-year-old Lewis, anytime if you even became vulnerable, I can only assume you were either mocked, put down,
I was very sensitive growing up, but then I would be made fun of, laughed at, picked on in school and sports. And that caused me to say, I want to fit in, I want to belong, I want to be accepted. So it means I got to be tough, I got to be strong, I can't show emotion. And I almost need to dominate others in sports to show how worthy I am, right? So I need to be bigger, faster, stronger. And when I tackle someone, I need to really make them feel pain so that they never want to get up. When I, dunk on someone, I need to make sure that I give them an extra elbow when I fall down to make sure they don't mess with me. Whatever it is, I need to make sure that I have full force and dominance in sports. And this win-lose mindset is always a lose-lose. There's no winner in that. I don't win anything from that. I might win the game, but I lose the lesson. And I lose my harmony and my peace inside of me. I might make a lot of money and build a business, but then at what price to my peace and to my harmony? And so my whole goal is to figure out how to keep unwinding this, because it's going to be a process forever. I'm going to continue to make mistakes. I'm going to continue to be out of integrity, but the goal is to stay as conscious as possible, have the accountability and the support as frequently as possible to stay on track and stay in harmony.
You had a quote that really hit me, and it's really important again that I understand men and where they come from. And this quote really hit me. The problem is that toughness doesn't stop, and it grows like cancer until it strangles all other feelings. I was like, oh God, I've never thought of toughness as being like that. And then with everything we're talking about, understanding when you were younger, the vulnerability, you were teased, mocked, bullied for it. Okay, so you got tough. And now in that toughness...
And then I had a lot of anger.
But I'm sure in those moments, people are now showing you more respect. They're kind of like getting more, quote unquote, in line. And so the toughness is actually teaching you a lesson, a false lesson, but it was teaching you a lesson. And then in that journey for 25, 30 years, no wonder your feelings were strangled.
Yeah, I was out of integrity with myself internally because I was getting external results living one way, but not getting the internal results of peace and harmony and alignment. Because I was living in anger, resentment, and a lack of forgiveness from all the things from the past. And a feeling of, I'm never going to let anyone abuse me, take advantage of me, or abandon me again. So if this ever comes up and I'm triggered, I'm going to block myself so it never happens. As opposed to just saying, life is going to happen. People are going to do what they do. I can interpret it as abandonment and abuse, or I can interpret it as something else of this and not take it personally. And I can create new meaning from the events that are occurring. It doesn't mean I have to like something. I might be disappointed still, but I don't need to be angry about it all. That doesn't serve my mission or my health. So again, I go back to priority 1 and 2, health and mission. If it's not useful for my health, why am I allowing it to consume and create a cancer inside of me? So again, it doesn't mean I'm this perfect human being. I'm going to be upset and angry at times, but it's allowing me. That's why I have coaching and accountability every couple of weeks to get me back on track, to process it, to talk about it, to get it out. I didn't like this thing. Okay, let's get it out and get back to the vision, get back to your mission, get back to who you are, which is a loving, passionate, wise, conscious human being. And that takes consistent practice.
To learn what romantic gestures are actually just a manipulation tactic, then click here right now.
You're not really that important to them at all when it comes to sex, apart from you're an achievement. And that can be very confusing for people because they think, oh my God, I've just met the most charming person. And